What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is usually me sitting down and taking a bunch of videos I did in the past and combine them together into one big video. Today's full story video is going to be about, well, Ultimate X-Men, with the idea of the third omnibus now being out there for you guys to collect, that collects, I want to say, Ultimatum tie-ins, the last few issues of Ultimate X-Men, and also Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk. I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and do a full story video with all those different storylines in one single video. And so with that being said, guys, here is Ultimate X-Men Omnibus Volume 3 full story video. I do hope you enjoy. Okay, so I knew that sooner or later we would have to redo our video over Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk, because as we were redoing all our videos for Ultimate X-Men, like I said, I knew sooner or later I had to sit back down and go back over Wolverine versus Hulk. Now, here's the thing, guys. Growing up for me, this was one of my first few storylines I had read growing up. And honestly, I came in at the tail end of this storyline. I had no idea. The first two issues came out like 2005, and the last four came out like 3 to 4 years later because there was a massive delay. But either way, for me personally, it's kind of a cool storyline, but also kind of messy as well in a way. You'll see what I mean as we go through today's storyline. But getting into the first chapter of this storyline, we pick up Wolverine right now bleeding out. Now, when it comes to Wolverine bleeding out, we're kind of left to wonder, what exactly happened to Wolverine? Like, why in the world right now is he bleeding out for? And so then we kind of find out the Hulk had apparently ripped Wolverine in half. And the bottom half, the Hulk decided to throw the bottom half of Wolverine up on the mountain 4 miles up on the mountain. And so Wolverine, he now has to crawl up the mountain to the bottom half of his body to hopefully repair himself. The question is right now, why in the world is Wolverine trying to chase after the Hulk for? And so this kind of leads into a flashback, right? Kind of explaining to us what exactly led to Wolverine wanting to chase after the Hulk. And so we see Wolverine right now meeting up with Nick Fury. Now, Wolverine already knows if he's meeting up with Nick Fury, it means two things. One, you are in trouble, or two, Nick needs you to do something for him, but most likely off the grid. And so while you have the two of them meeting up one another, is Wolverine realized there are two other people right now currently watching the meeting behind the painting in the room. And so you have Nick say, fine, go ahead and come out. And we see that it's Betty Ross and also Jennifer Walters. And so the question is right now, why is all three of them here for? Well, we already know. They want Wolverine to chase after the Hulk. Now, this is a callback to Ultimates 2, and let me explain. You see, when it came to Bruce Banner being the Hulk, right, in this reality, he's a savage beast. And so in Ultimates 1, he killed off like 600 people. And the reason why, because Betty Ross had went on a date with somebody else. And so when it came to Ultimates 2, Bruce Banner was put on trial for all those different murders. And of course, the dude was found guilty for all those different murders. And so for S.H.I.E.L.D., they say, you know what? He has to die. So let's go ahead and try to nuke him. Now, when it came to Ultimates 2, we knew at the very end of that storyline, Bruce had survived. And I kind of felt like this storyline right here was supposed to come out in the middle of Ultimates 2. But of course, there was delays. But anyway, though, when it came to Bruce Banner, he had survived the nuke and been hiding out there in the world. And so for Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., they heard these different things happening across the world, like, earthquakes, cows dying, all these different huge, massive attacks. But the thing was, never had hardcore proof that showed that Bruce Banner has survived. The Hulk is out there causing damage across the world. But then they found a finger in a pile of the Hulk's poop. And that right there kind of told them like, hey, the Hulk is still alive. And this is where Wolverine comes in. Because for Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., they had messed up. You told the entire world that you had handled the Hulk problem, that Hulk is now officially gone. But in reality, the Hulk is still alive and now causing problems across the entire world. But on top of that, when it comes to Bruce Banner, let's not forget, Nick brought Bruce in to work on recreating the super soldier serum. And so it's kind of like, Nick, all of this is your fault right now. And of course, you want to make sure this stays off the grid. You want to make sure you find a way to deal with the Hulk so the world will find out that Hulk is still alive right now and you have failed once again. And so you, Betty Ross, also being very upset about the idea of using Logan because, yes, for Logan, he's one of the best killers in the Ultimate Marvel universe. So most likely, yeah, if he does find Bruce Banner, Bruce is going to die. And so when it comes to Wolverine, he's all like, I'm down. Because to him, this sounds fun. The Hulk is so dangerous to him. He's kind of like, dude, this is an actual challenge. I am up to it. Now, for Jennifer Walters, she tells Logan like, hey, listen, Bruce is a good man. But at the same time, Logan's like, yeah, sure he is. But this dude also killed off 600 people. And let's not forget, Bruce did that because he found out that Betty Ross had went on a date with somebody else. And so this kind of leads into the ending of the first chapter, right? Where it's really more of us seeing Wolverine being able to track down the Hulk in Tibet. And so once you have Wolverine arrive there, he also realized that all the ladies in one village are all just currently missing. It's kind of like, where in the world could all these different ladies be at? And so while you do have Wolverine trying to investigate, we kind of find out that Hulk is right now, or had officially taken over some temple, right? And you have all these different ladies just crawling all over him. But once you do have Wolverine walk into that room, he's all like, hey, Bruce or Hulk, you know what I'm here for. Let's go ahead and get down to it. And you have Wolverine go ahead and pop the claws. And so for chapter 2, it's really being used to explain how did Bruce arrive at this moment? Like, what in the world happened? Because in Ultimates 2, we saw that nuke drop. Like, it dropped and we're left to believe that he had died. By the end of Ultimates 2, we saw that he had survived. And so the question was, where in the world was Bruce Banner? And so we see that in the opening pages, right before he got nuked, he realized he was going to die. He wanted to die because he killed off 800 people. He killed off children as well. The nuke dropped, he turned to the Hulk and got away. Now, let's not forget, in the first chapter, they told us that different things popped up across the world. And so this chapter alone is telling us what led to Bruce Banner turning to the Hulk in those different moments. Like, for example, right now, he's in Paris, right? And of course, using a fake name, but he's going through a therapy session, trying to help himself control his anger. Now, the thing we learned that for Bruce Banner, he has been calling Betty Ross. The thing is, every single time she answers the phone, he does not say anything at all, leaving her wondering who in the world is calling her. Now, for the therapist, she realized that he's scared. Like, he is scared of the idea of her knowing that he is alive, or possibly that he is scared of her telling him again that he is not good enough in all different types of ways. But it's also her saying, like, you are allowing your intelligence get in the way of your growth. Like, you keep telling me that you have grown when it comes to controlling your anger, controlling your emotions. But in reality, it seems like you haven't. But again, it's also her playing with the idea that he is scared. He is scared of him calling Betty Ross, telling Betty that he is alive, and then Betty once again telling him that he's not good enough in many types of ways, like especially in bed possibly. And so of course it takes off Bruce and he turns to the Hulk and goes on a rampage in Paris. Now, 1 month after that, we get another incident where it's him getting angry at himself because he keeps calling Betty Ross, and every single time she answers, he freezes up. He does not say her name or anything at all to kind of show her that, one, he's still alive, and two, he wants to know if she still has feelings for him. Now, 1 month later, he looked on a farm, right? And the thing was, he was trying his best to keep a low profile. The problem was that you had some other farmers or workers on the farm who decided to pick on him for being a vegetarian. And so with him being picked on, he got angry and killed off those guys, but also all the different cows on that farm. And so we're seeing all these different moments for a very good reason. And here's the reason why. Because for Bruce, it's now really him trying to get a better handle on his anger, his emotions. Now, technically, we saw earlier he was trying to do that, but now he's trying a different method. Why not go out of his way to find the Panchen Lama, kind of hopefully teach him how to control his anger, to control his emotions, to hopefully possibly lock away the Hulk. And so when he does arrive at the temple where the Panchen Lama should be at, well, you have this guy, this monk walker. He's all like, oh, me? I am not the Panchen Lama. Matter of fact, I'm just Steve. But go ahead and come inside, you meet my master, and hopefully he can teach you your ways or his ways to help you control your anger. And this leads into a very important question. You see, we kind of find out the Panchen Lama is a young boy. But this young boy is very wise in so many different kind of ways. But the young boy knows who Bruce Banner is, because when it came to Bruce, when he had asked for a map earlier, that guy there did a security check and realized who he was. Like, oh, you're Bruce Banner, you're the Hulk. And so for the Panchen Lama, he knows almost everything about Bruce. But he says, hey, listen, so you keep telling me that you're here to control your emotions. You're here to control your anger so that you will not turn into the Hulk. Now, when Bruce speaks of the Hulk, it's kind of like they're two separate beings. Like, here's Hulk, here's Bruce. The only thing is they both share one body, and that is it. And the thing for Bruce is Bruce turns into the Hulk. And so you have the Panchen Lama say, but what if it's the other way around? What if it's not you turning into the Hulk, but the Hulk turning into you? And so that question right there kind of flips the table on Bruce's mind a tad bit, but also help Bruce understand, like, hey, you and the Hulk could be different, but at the same time, could be the same person. It could be your emotions just evolving into this other form, possibly. But this leads us back to what we saw at the end of the first chapter. Wolverine walking in that door, right? Finding the Hulk and seeing the Hulk has officially taken over this entire temple and have all of these different ladies just crawling over him. But the big shocker is that when it comes to the Hulk, he speaks to Logan normally and says, hello, Logan. And that right there throws Wolverine off. And so as we dive into the third chapter, we're really getting more into like, okay, Wolverine's turn again. And it's Wolverine trying to figure out where to pick up at in the storyline. Like, do you want to know what I said to tick the Hulk off? Or what happened right after you had the Hulk, like, rip off my legs, right? And so you have Wolverine start there first. And so it's Wolverine and Hulk trying to have a conversation. We do know that apparently Wolverine said something that did tick the Hulk off, that led the Hulk saying, you know what, let me go ahead and like rip you in half. But after doing that, the Hulk had calmed down again. And then we kind of get an example of the Hulk actually being able to hold a conversation with Wolverine. Whereas him right now saying like, Wolverine, I know you, that if I don't go out my way to eat one of your legs, then you'll try your best to heal up and continue to follow after me. And Wolverine's kind of like, yeah, dude, no matter what, I'm gonna still try my best to go after you and try to kill you. With the Hulk trying his best to not be that killer anymore, trying to kill off Wolverine. But while you have the two guys talking to one another, something begins to fall out of the sky. But we then go back in time again. And with us going back in time, we're now picking up with Wolverine, walking into that temple, seeing the Hulk now being in control of the entire temple. But now it's us figuring out, like, what did Wolverine say to the Hulk to tick the Hulk off that led into the idea of the Hulk ripping Wolverine in half? Like, what did Homeboy say to the Hulk? And so at first, the conversation is really more Hulk trying to figure out, like, why is Logan there for. Because for the Hulk, he already knows why Logan is there for. The idea that Nick Fury has sent Logan to kill off the Hulk. But this kind of leads into a conversation of, is Wolverine an animal? Because for the Hulk, Wolverine is. Like, here you are right now, taking this assignment, this mission, to come after me, to kill me. And you're saying that an animal because you don't lay eggs? Like, come on, dude. It's the violent side of you. You are an animal. Now, for Logan, he decides to tick off the Hulk by talking about Betty. Now, at first, you have the Hulk play it cool because, again, there's the whole idea of Bruce wants to be with Betty, but he's afraid of the idea of Betty saying, like, he's not good enough, that he might be, a bad lover or something else about him in a negative way. But as the Hulk hears these things, he's staying calm. But then slowly, piece by piece, you have the Hulk side turn more savage because you have the Hulk say, leave. But also it's him now talking to third person. And so while Wolverine is leaving, while you have Logan leaving, you didn't have Logan say, hey, just asking, how would you feel if me and Betty, get together one night and do some, fun stuff? That right there ticks off the Hulk. And so now we're kind of back at the moment where we do see Wolverine, still ripped in half, but also the Hulk holding on to his lower half. But then we kind of find out that something else crash landed down there to help deal with the Hulk, being a plan B. And so now we're getting our first official look at Ultimate She-Hulk in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, the fourth chapter really does focus more on, Betty Ross. Let's not forget that we saw in one of the flashbacks that for Bruce Banner, when he kept calling up Betty, right? Now, one time he did call, a man answered. And so we see that scene right now, that guy answering the phone and everything. But it's also her now realizing that it had to be Bruce who had called her. And so now she realized that Bruce must be alive. But now we kind of switch over to that point where it was Nick Fury meeting Wolverine to ask Wolverine to go after the Hulk, right? And so we pick up Betty Ross and Jennifer Walters behind that painting. I almost said wall again. That painting. Now, with the two behind that painting, is Jennifer doing two things here. First, getting on Betty Ross's nerves by saying, like, this is your fault. Like, the whole idea of the Hulk, the whole idea of Bruce being alive, like, it's all your fault because you made that man fall in love with you. And then you decided, you know what? I did not care for him that much and went on another date with somebody else and everything. It's all your fault. That's Jennifer saying that, right? But it's also her asking for a small sample of the Hulk formula because she believes that she can make it perfect in a way where you get all the Hulk with no anger behind it and everything. And that's her goal right there. And so she asked Betty, hey, can I get a small sample of the Hulk formula? Because I want to work on this off-site, meaning that I don't want Nick Fury and anyone else knowing I'm working on the Hulk formula. Now, you do have Betty Ross go out of her way to confront, Iron Man and also Captain America about the idea of them knowing the entire time that Bruce was alive, because it's her saying, like, why did no one tell me that he was alive? Now, it's Iron Man kind of like, girl, you already knew he was alive. Like, come on now. But it's also her kind of feeling like if they're not really able to kill off the Hulk, then he should get a free pass. But also kind of be used in a way where, they control him in terms of the Hulk. Like, use him as an actual weapon instead of him being some kind of outlaw that needs to be killed off. Now, for Iron Man, really, Steve Rogers does agree, but it's Iron Man saying, Betty, you don't understand because you're not a hero. You're not someone with powers or anything. You're just a regular person. You know how it feels to have the power in your hand. And so it's him saying, like, the whole Hulk situation, you don't understand because you are not one of us. You are not a hero or some kind of super being. Now, a couple of days before the actual present day, we see Jennifer Walters did work on the Hulk formula, and she did make it better to the point where, yes, you get all the Hulk, but no rampaging at all. Now, again, she did test this on an animal, but it does seem like it actually worked. Now, for Betty, once she finds out, she's very upset at what she found out, but this kind of begins her plan on helping get with the whole Hulk situation when it comes to Bruce and Wolverine fighting in later parts of this storyline. Because now we're picking up with Betty heading over to meet up with Nick Fury and telling Nick a completely different story what she heard when it comes to Jennifer. She has supposedly heard that Jennifer is going to try to sell the secret to the super soldier serum over to China. And that right there would be a major problem. And so it's her saying like, listen, Nick, because I'm the one who figured this out, I need your help. Because I learned that tomorrow, supposedly, there's going to be a drop tomorrow to make this deal. And so it's her saying, I need you to authorize anything I need to help you bring her down. And so it's Nick saying like, okay, if you truly believe this right now going to happen, then guess what? You get anything you need. And that last part right there, it's really important because it's also her, like later on, calling up some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and telling them to keep following Wolverine. She wants Wolverine's location. And when they asked for like Nick Fury approval, she had recorded Nick saying like, get her anything she needs. And so playing that recording, the guy's all like, all right, boss, sound like you're there. Okay, cool. We will continue to track down Wolverine, but also set up a jet that'll lead you right over to where Wolverine and Hulk is at. And so when it comes to Nick Fury, he still believes that, hey, when it comes to Jennifer, she's right now trying to sell off the secret soldier serum in China. And so they follow her. And once they do find her, they get the jump on her, only come to find out that she's not there to sell the secret to the super soldier serum. No, instead, it's her somehow being able to get her hands on the next Star Trek movie before it had officially released. And so now for Nick, he realized that he had been played by Betty Ross. But now we're kind of like just moments before we saw at the end of the last chapter where we saw She-Hulk appear, right? Because now it's Betty arriving at the scene where it's Wolverine, it's the Hulk, right? But you had Nick call up those S.H.I.E.L.D. agents like, hey, you need to stop her right now. Stop that woman. But the problem is that she already took the Hulk formula. And so she jumps out the plane, turns to She-Hulk, and then crashes right in front of Wolverine and also the Hulk. Now, as we saw earlier, when it came to Logan bringing up Betty Ross for Hulk, he kind of turned savage again. He kind of lost control. And so once he realized that this She-Hulk is Betty, he's kind of like, Betty, I want to kill you. You're like, whoa, Hulk, we're doing good there. Wait, whoa, don't kill her. Don't go angry again. And so as we get into the 5th chapter, we're now picking up with Wolverine, well, dreaming, like he's knocked out. And right now being confronted by his spirit animal, which also is a panda. I find that pretty funny. Now, when it comes to this panda, right, is him right now trying to warn Wolverine what to do when he does wake up and say, listen, this whole entire situation is now only between you and Banner, and that is really it. But on top of that, make sure you don't tell the people who had cut your head off anything at all about the girl and also Banner, but especially do not tell them what you had heard when it came to the Hulk. And so it's kind of like, what did Wolverine hear after She-Hulk arrived? And also, who in the world had cut off Wolverine's head? And so once you do have Wolverine wake up, he realized that, well, his head has been cut off and somehow he's still alive. And so it's Wolverine right now, as Nick Fury says, breathing through his skin. So he's somehow alive at the moment. And also Nick saying like, your powers are not really based on the idea of healing, but really more based around the idea of surviving. Now, it's also Nick want to know what exactly happened when it came to She-Hulk and the Hulk and Wolverine being there in Tibet. And for Wolverine, he remembers what the panda told him. Do not say anything at all. And so for right now, it's Wolverine trying to say like, I do not remember anything at all. I had to basically black out. And it's him at first trying to pretend like he does not remember the idea of She-Hulk being there. Now, the problem is that you have Wolverine bring up the fact that Nick Fury did he did drop a bomb on all three of them at the very end of the last chapter. And so it's Nick Fury saying, if you don't remember what She-Hulk and Hulk said or did, then how in the world did you remember the idea of me dropping a bomb. And so just like that, Nick knows that Wolverine knows something about the Hulk and also She-Hulk and where in the world they had went off to. But you didn't have Nick shoot Wolverine in the head to knock him back out again. And so now we're kind of given that flashback where we do see like what exactly happened right after She-Hulk arrived. And for Wolverine, he said, at first, it did seem like they were fighting against one another, but then I realized they were no longer fighting against one another, that instead they were screwing each other right there in front of Logan. But then, of course, Hulk realized a bomb on its way over to them, and so the Hulk tried his best to stop that bomb. And then Wolverine had supposedly blacked out thanks to the bomb going off. Now, once you do have Wolverine wake back up again, it's Wolverine now kind of realizing that he's in some kind of prison cell with no door, just a window, a small window, which means that most likely he was teleported inside this actual prison cell and still being held by S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, it's also Wolverine being confronted by Forge. Now, with Forge being there, is Forge right now trying to escape by using a tuning fork, basically being able to vibrate through solid objects. Now, Wolverine realized he can use Forge as a way to escape and continue his hunt for both Hulk and also She-Hulk. So he tells Forge, you, my friend, are going to help me to escape. And Forge is all like, fine, I guess, whatever. And so you have Forge and Wolverine being able to escape from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base. But now we're seeing Wolverine going out of his way to ask Forge to help create a device that will help him bring down the Hulk. Really, two devices to bring both Hulk and She-Hulk down. And so we see Forge being able to do that. He makes these collars. Now, Wolverine wants to know, like, what would happen? Like, what can you do to make sure that they're not able to pull off these collars? And you have Forge say the only way if they are able to pull off these collars, if they have the strength of the weight of the moon to be able to pull these collars off. And so it's Wolverine kind of wondering how strong the Hulk truly is. And the same goes for She-Hulk as well. But you didn't have Wolverine tell Forge where he is going to next, because he remembers what the Hulk told She-Hulk before he had blacked out thanks to the bomb. The Hulk told She-Hulk to meet me at Casablanca. And then as you have Wolverine tell Forge that, well, they don't know that security cameras Forge has been hacked into by Nick Fury. Or most likely Forge is helping Nick Fury, but either way, Nick now knows where to go next. But as we get into the final chapter for today's video, we do pick up Wolverine right now arriving in Hong Kong. Now, this is also a callback to Volume 1 for Ultimate X-Men, because in Volume 1, there was this question, like, how in the world does Wolverine get past airport security? Because his whole entire body is covered in metal. Well, come to find out this time, you had Wolverine place a fake grenade in someone else's bag. So of course, it does cause commotion in the airport to allow him the ability to sneak out of the airport without passing through any kind of security system. But this kind of leads us over to Wolverine being able to locate Betty Ross. Now for Wolverine, he already knew that for Betty and Bruce, they're going to try to travel separately from one another, right? And so he was able to realize where Betty could possibly be at. And so once he finds her or found her, he headed over to her hotel room. And when she walked to the shower, he's all like, hey, Betty, how's it going? So guess what? So I have this collar for you. This collar right here will basically stop you from turning into the Hulk. If you try to, you will die. So go ahead, put the collar on, and let's go ahead and go. Now, Betty Ross, she believes in the idea that because she is She-Hulk now, she should be able to handle Wolverine. The thing is, while they do battle, Wolverine's able to stab her with only one of his claws. And he said, listen, I still have 2 more claws to pop. If I do, one of them will hit your liver and you will die. So how about this? Go ahead, turn back to normal, put the collar on. I will call you an ambulance and, hopefully S.H.I.E.L.D. does pick you up and that'll be it. And so you have her follow those orders. And then she does tell Wolverine, please do not kill off Bruce. To me, he is a good man. Wolverine's all like, I don't care. He gotta go. But this kind of leads to us seeing Wolverine being able to locate Bruce, right? Now, Once he does find Bruce, he sneaks up on Bruce and places the collar on Bruce's neck. Now, for Bruce Banner, if he tries to turn into the Hulk, well, he will choke himself to death just like that. Now, Wolverine, he wants that to happen because Bruce say like, then why not go ahead and try to kill me now? And the thing Wolverine says is that I don't want to kill you. I want to kill off the Hulk because it was the Hulk who had ripped me in half. It was the Hulk who had to eat my legs. It was the Hulk who gave me a hard time. You, Bruce, did nothing to me at all. So why in the world should I care? And so it's him saying like, no, I'm going to wait until I make you angry enough so that you turn into the Hulk, but then you'll die while trying to turn into the Hulk. And then I'll be officially satisfied. Now, for Bruce, he knows he can play with the idea in his mind a tad bit. Because Wolverine said, I want to see the Hulk die. I don't care about Bruce at all. And so you have Bruce jump out of the plane. And so it's Bruce saying like, listen, if you want to see the Hulk die, then you have no choice to go ahead and try to cut the collar off so that I'll survive and you'll have a chance to kill the Hulk down the road. But if you don't, I'll just die and you won't be satisfied at all because, again, the Hulk won't die, Bruce will die. And for Wolverine, they are two different people. And so Wolverine had no choice to go ahead and cut the collar off. And so while you have Wolverine doing that, you then have Bruce go ahead and turn back into Hulk to save both lives. Now, once you do have both guys crash on the ground, they're then confronted by Nick Fury. And it's Nick Fury saying like, listen, I've been following Wolverine the entire time. And we saw at the end of the last chapter because it's him saying like, Wolverine's a hunter, and Wolverine sometimes does not realize while being a hunter, he's also being used by other people for different reasons. Like the whole idea of Forge was Nick Fury using Forge to help Wolverine to get what he wanted, which was again, Hulk and She-Hulk. But it's Nick telling Hulk now like, honestly, Bruce, you are now free. And here's the reason why. Because when Wolverine went after She-Hulk first and was able to capture her, S.H.I.E.L.D. picked her up. She's now a S.H.I.E.L.D. prisoner. And so it's Nick saying, listen, go, be free. The thing is that if you try to do anything at all, remember, we have She-Hulk. But on top of that, just in case down the road, if you want to come back and work for me, I'll try my best to make sure you're a nice cell right next to her. But tell you right now, no matter what, you really can't do anything at all because I am now holding on to your lover, your girl. And technically, that's really it. And so Nick walks away. And the book does end on that note where it's the two guys, Wolverine and Hulk, just walking away together. Kind of like this whole mess was wild. Okay, so it's been a while since we last sat down and continue our coverage over Ultimate X-Men. I kind of want to go ahead and get back into it, right? And so we are going to continue our coverage over Robert Kirkman's run on Ultimate X-Men, which also means that we're now getting into the idea of Cable. We're going to get our first look at Ultimate Cable in the old Ultimate Marvel universe. And for me personally, I do kind of like the twist at the end of the first chapter for this storyline. But as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up with us finding out that it's Jean Grey's 20th birthday. Now for Cyclops, he wants to be there for his girlfriend. Kind of like, hey girl, got you a birthday gift. I hope you like it. But for Jean Grey, she has gone through a lot. The team has gone through a lot. The church that she are, the Phoenix, the Magician, Dazzler leaving, Nightcrawler going crazy. Like for the team, they have gone through a lot, especially her. So even though technically right now it's her birthday, she does not really want to celebrate her own birthday. Now for Charles Xavier, it's him coming home after having a sleepover with somebody, but as soon as he does arrive back at the mansion, he's then confronted by Quicksilver. Now for Quicksilver, it's him saying like, listen, I have something for you, and it comes from my boss, Nick Fury. And so you have Charles call up Nick Fury. And we kind of find out Nick Fury is very concerned about Jean Grey and the whole idea of the Phoenix. And so they're kind of afraid of the episode happening that could go in the wrong way with the X-Men or the rest of the country as well. And so it's Nick saying, like, listen, I had created this device to kind of help Jean Grey keep her powers under control, to kind of help keep the whole idea of the Phoenix under control. Now, for Nick, it's him trying to trust Charles, but at the same time for Charles, he already had a few other members of the X-Men do some questionable things. So the idea of Jean Grey being there is Nick kind of wondering, like, Charles, why are you so worried, so concerned, or you're so into protecting this one student? We also have some other things going on with the team, right? So the idea of Rogue, let me explain. Because for Rogue, for a minute there, she had absorbed the powers of Gambit right before he had died. And so she had became the new Gambit and Ultimate X-Men. And matter of fact, it allowed her the ability to touch people like her boyfriend Iceman. But now she lost all of that. So now she's back to regular Rogue. And so it's right now affecting her relationship with Iceman. But we also kind of get the idea that Kitty Pryde is going through something. Now, this was Ultimate Marvel beginning the process of removing Kitty Pryde and putting her over in Ultimate Spider-Man because she was dating Peter Parker. Let's go ahead and switch back over to Jean Grey, because you do have Charles, call Jean Grey down to his office, and they do have a conversation. And of course, the conversation about the idea of her wearing a device that Nick Fury gave Charles. And so it's him saying, like, listen, I'm only handing you this as a way to help you, but it also help us as well. We're also given a Danger Room session going on between Storm and Wolverine to kind of remind us that after Beast had died, Storm kind of found a way to fall in love with Wolverine and vice versa for him as well. So they're kind of dating one another. And so you have the two of them in the Danger Room just working out. It's a little small, quick reminder that these two are a couple right now in Ultimate X-Men. But we're also kind of given this reminder of Nightcrawler, who had a whole mental breakdown. And so it's Charles right now trying his best to help repair the mind of Nightcrawler, except while doing that, well, out of nowhere, a portal opens up. And this gives us our first look at Ultimate Cable. Now, originally, when I saw this, I was kind of like, oh my God, Ultimate Cable. Okay, so how is it going to be different? And at first I thought there'll still be some kind of connection, right? When it comes to Cable, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, or Cyclops and somebody else being the mother of Cable. Who knew? And so at first, when he appears, he tries to kill off Charles Xavier. Now, luckily, you have the rest of the X-Men arrive, but one by one. So Kitty Pryde comes in at first, and for Kitty Pryde, she's taken out. Jean Grey arrives, Colossus arrives. You have most of the X-Men appear one by one. You had this guy just being able to take them down one by one. Now, the last battle for me for the first chapter is amazing because it's Wolverine and Storm arriving, right? Storm gets taken out just like that. So it's Wolverine versus Cable, and Wolverine is pushing Cable to that limit. And so for Cable, he has no choice but to go ahead and use his secret weapon. He has to pop out his own claws. We kind of find out that Cable is just a future version of Wolverine in the first chapter ending. And so as we get into the second chapter, it's really more of us kind of seeing who's the better fighter here, Wolverine or Cable, which is just basically future Wolverine. And so as the battle goes on, you would think at first our Wolverine should have the edge, right? Because he's younger, faster, and also he has a healing factor. Cable tells all the bat that he does not have a healing factor at all. But on top of that, for Cable is that he has experience. But also for Cable, he knows his past self very well, all the different moves that he would try to do. And so you have Cable kind of have the advantage over Wolverine and really being able to defeat Wolverine in a few pages. Now for Cable, he believes he can now continue on, except he forgot about Rogue and also Iceman as well. And really with Rogue and Iceman being there, and for Cable forgetting about those two characters, it kind of throws his whole entire plan off. Because remember guys, he came here to kill Charles Xavier, but now it's kind of okay, Now with Iceman and Rogue being there, it allows the rest of the X-Men to kind of get back up and work together to hopefully bring him down. And so for Cable, he now has to go to Plan B. Plan B does not really involve Charles Xavier. It involves grabbing someone else, and that would be Jean Grey. And so you have Cable grab Jean Grey, open the portal, and just disappear. So for the X-Men, kind of wondering, where in the world did Cable take Jean Grey possibly to? Now, once you do have the X-Men try to recover, we do kind of focus on Kitty Pryde. And like I said earlier, this kind of began the process of the idea of Kitty Pryde leaving the X-Men and going over to Ultimate Spider-Man comics because, well, she was dating Peter Parker. And so we see Kitty Pryde explain how much she kind of hates the school. She only came here to learn how to control her abilities, but now things have changed rapidly. Like every week, something's just popping off at the school. Now, for me personally, I'm kind of like, well, wait, Kitty Pryde, because in the earlier runs by Mark Miller and also Brian Vaughan, you were also trying to get involved in different missions, but it's her saying like, I have a change of heart, a change of mind. So it does seem like she might leave. And so you also have Cyclops and Charles Xavier trying their best to think of a game plan on how in the world they're going to find Cable and at least try to stop Cable. And so while you have the two guys make that plan up, let's go ahead and shift back over to Wolverine because this brings in another character. Because for Wolverine, his main goal right now is just find some different clues that could help them figure out where Cable had taken Jean Grey to. Except while trying to do that, another portal opens up. But this time, it's not Cable. It's Ultimate Bishop. You're like, okay, cool. We're getting everybody all at once now. Cool. Okay, all right. And so you have Wolverine knock out Ultimate Bishop in a matter of a few seconds there. And so with Bishop being here, we kind of learned very quickly that his main goal was not to really help Cable, but to stop Cable. And so for Bishop now realizing that Cable has gotten away, but it's also Bishop trying to warn the X-Men like, listen, things get a whole lot harder for you now because if Cable did win, he did at least grab someone who works for you guys. That means his plans right now are going in the right direction for him, which also means things get a whole lot harder for you and I both. Now, when it comes to Cable, he has Jean Grey, right? But it's Cable saying like, listen, Jean Grey, I'm not really worried about the X-Men. Like, I feel like I can technically handle them. And so it's him trying to tell her like, he didn't come back alone. Homeboy brought a team with him. He brought Ultimate Six-Pack with him. So you have Cable, Domino, Grizzly, Hammer, and also Kane. They're all here together right now. His six-pack. And he feels like he has the chance to stop the X-Men and complete the goal that he is trying to, well, complete. Now, I have to say something. Because as we get into the third chapter, we're kind of also entering this weird like moment in Ultimate X-Men that for me personally, I did not like. Like the idea of Cable being the future version of Wolverine, that's cool. Other parts of the storyline is also cool. It's the ending of this chapter that kind of bothered me a tad bit. But getting into the opening pages is Iceman right now checking in on Cyclops. Now, because the team can see that Scott is worried for Jean Grey. And the thing is, the dude has the right to be worried. His girlfriend was taken away by future Wolverine, by Cable. And so they're kind of wondering how in the world are they going to be able to save Jean Grey? But it's also like Bobby kind of wanting someone to talk to because for him and Rogue, they had the ability to touch one another. And then it was taken away just like that. And so it's Bobby right now freaking out because for him, it's like, I no longer have the ability to hug my girlfriend, kiss my girlfriend, hold hands with my girlfriend. It is now completely gone. And so with all that being said, it's the two guys kind of coming together, but also Cyclops kind of realizing that his team needs him at the moment. Now we do see a small conversation happen between Storm and also Charles Xavier. And this conversation is really more of Storm kind of confirming for us the possibility of Kitty Pryde leaving the X-Men and going over to Ultimate Spider-Man comics. And really it's Charles saying like, yeah, I already knew. Like, I've been watching over you guys, listening in. Like, I kind of realized that she's literally already 1 foot out the door, which means sooner or later, she's going to leave, which honestly, she does leave pretty soon when it came to Ultimate X-Men. But it's now time for the meeting where you have Bishop being able to build a game plan to find Cable and to hopefully bring Cable down. And so you have Bishop say like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Rogue, and Iceman. You guys are coming with me. Cyclops, you can't go. Now, for Bishop, it's more of like Cyclops. We need, for two reasons why you can't go. First reason why, we need somebody to watch over Charles. Because again, Cable's main mission was to kill off Charles Xavier. And the reason why, because he believes that it's Charles' fault for what happens in their future. Because for Cable, he had put different things together and all leads back over to Charles Xavier. Like, he's the reason why their future is so dark and everything. But it's also him saying, like, your emotions right now out of control. Like, I cannot rely on you out there in the field. So I need you here with a calmer mind, but to also protect Charles Xavier. And so you have the team head over to where Cable is hiding out at, which by the way is an old Weapon X facility where Rogue does kind of remember. Wolverine doesn't, but he heard stories about this place. But as soon as they arrive, oh my God, Rogue arm gets blown off. Now you have Wolverine kind of hand over his healing factor, but it's like, will she be able to survive before, you know, her arm grows back? Like, will she die before that? Who knows? And so you have Bishop open the portal and send Rogue back into the school in infirmary so that, you know, Charles, Cyclops, and Kitty Pryde can take care of her and stuff like that. But for the rest of the X-Men right now with Bishop, they have to fight against a six-pack. It's Domino, it's Grizzly, it's Hammer, it's Kane, and they're all kind of giving our heroes an actual challenge here at the moment. But while you do have battle going on for Cable, he kind of feels like the battle is not going to end the way that he's kind of hoping it would. So it's him saying like, okay, you know what? I might have to go ahead and go to the next part of my plan. And so he walks and took on Jean Grey. Now, this part right here kind of confirms that possibly, just possibly, that Cable is the original future timeline for the Ultimate Marvel universe. The reason why I say that, but you'll see why as I go through the Ultimate Marvel X-Men comics going into Ultimatum. But when it comes to Cable, when he does check in on Jean Grey, asks her one question, like, do you see the goblins when you use your powers? She does not answer the question, but the way she looks at him kind of tells him that's an automatic yes. And so it kind of shows that he does know things about Jean Grey. But let's go ahead and get into the weird ending that I do not like for this chapter, because for Charles Xavier at first, it does seem kind of normal. Like, he is so worried about his students, you know, Rogue, Cyclops, Kitty Pryde. So he's like, you know what? Enough's enough. If this man wants me dead, there's no way I'm going to put my students on the line to protect me. So he's kind of saying, you know what? Let's go ahead, get the jet and head out there now and let's stop this madman. Now for Cyclops, he's kind of like, no, you know what, Charles? Bishop is right. Let's stay here. You're protected. I'm here as well. Like, let's make sure we don't do anything crazy. The problem is that you have Charles just snap to explain why he wants to save Jean Grey so bad. By the end of this chapter, this man says, because I'm in love with Jean Grey. And so this kind of leads into the big conclusion to the whole massive storyline, because we do pick up with, you know, Charles Xavier and Cyclops heading over to the battle, right? It is wild because Charles is like, hey, Scott, you want to talk about it? You know, I said, I love your girlfriend. It was kind of wild. Like, do you want to talk about it? And Scott's like, no, I do not want to at all. And so you did have Scott just jump out the plane, and it's like, hey, you better tell Storm to save my life, but also you better find a way to land that plane, because if you don't, you're going to die. And so it's just Scott right now joining the battle. And then like, okay, so because Charles did not really learn how to pilot the plane, oh my gosh, the plane crashes down, and like, I think it's Hammer or Grizzly, one of the two characters' back gets like completely broken. And so you had a six-pack say, we got to dip out because we're not getting paid enough for something like this. Cable is now on his own. Bye. So they dip out, right? And so while they're gone, you did have Scott say, cool, so I'm going to chase after Cable. I'm getting my girl back here and now, and runs after Jean Grey. Really, I mean, he went after Cable to get Jean Grey back, right? But anyways, we kind of get into the idea of seeing Cable and, you know, Cyclops fighting against one another. And for me, we can say, this battle is different because it's not a usual battle you see in the main Marvel universe, because Cable in that universe is Cyclops' son. This is future Wolverine who's on a mission to kill off Charles Xavier, but also like kidnap Jean Grey. So it's a bit different. You know, it's still Wolverine versus Cyclops, but there's so many different other factors now added into it. But you do kind of have battle in a bad way because you have Charles Xavier get involved. And once you have Cable realize that Charles is there, cool. He hits a button. The place going to blow up. But you have Charles, at the very last second, push Cyclops out of the building to save his life. And so with him doing that, the book ends on the note where everyone realized that Charles Xavier is dead. Like, his body is there, but it's just bones. He's been completely fried. And so it's everyone kind of wondering where to go next. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Ultimate X-Men. And so with that being said, we're going to pick up a two-part storyline called Aftermath. And of course, this does take place right after the idea of the Cable storyline. Now, if you haven't seen my last video, it was the idea that you had Cable, a future version of Wolverine, come back in time and kill off Charles Xavier. But also now, it's kind of like, what's next for the X-Men now? And what's next for them? Because now you are talking about the idea of the X-Men no longer having their leader, Charles Xavier, around. So what could possibly happen to them? And so getting into the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up with the idea of Kitty Pryde officially leaving the X-Men. I've kind of been talking about this for a good while when it came to our coverage over Ultimate X-Men. You see, around this time in Ultimate Marvel, well, Kitty Pryde was dating Spider-Man, the Ultimate Spider-Man. And so with those two dating, you had Marvel kind of begin the process moving her character away from X-Men and over into Spider-Man comics. And so just like that, she's now officially gone. With the idea of Charles being dead, in her mind, she no longer has a reason to be there. Even though you have Bobby kind of like, hey, we need everyone here, for Kitty, she's out. She's done. And the thing is for her is like, she only came here to learn how to control her powers, how to use her powers. That's done. So what other reason she has to stay here to school right now? But I want to go ahead and switch over to Nick Fury and also the General and the President of America. And the reason why, because you have these two kind of talking about the idea of, well, will the mutant race try to rise up as a way to honor Charles Xavier? Because to the General, he truly did believe that it was Charles right now controlling the minds of all the mutants across the world and kind of keeping them at bay. Now, of course, Nick says that's not true at all, but it's the possibility now with Charles' death, what's going to happen to the mutant race? Will it be some kind of war out of his legacy between mutants and humans? And Nick says we should not be worried at all right now. We do know one thing for sure, that Charles was killed off by another mutant. But I want to go ahead and also switch over to Wolverine, because Wolverine a while ago, before even Kirkman took over, you had Sabretooth kind of play with the idea of the possibility that he is the son of Wolverine. But on top of that is him also saying Wolverine, go find your wife. When you find her, you're going to find the answers that you have been looking for. And then he leaves just like that. And so as we do switch over to Cyclops and Jean Grey, this is really more of Cyclops trying to get ready for the funeral. Now for Jean Grey, a lot has been going on with her character. The idea of the Phoenix, the idea of Charles dying and being kidnapped and being the main reason why Charles killed off, because trying to protect Cyclops and also Jean Grey. But it's her having a hard time believing that he's officially gone. And for Jean Grey, Charles is kind of like a father figure to her. And so it's hard for her to see him being dead. Now for Scott, it's hard for him because he also looked at Charles as a father figure. But let's not forget, in the last video, Charles did admit that he had feelings for Jean Grey. And that right there really did tick off Scott a lot. And so for Scott, it's hard to hear these things being said by Jean Grey. Now also for Scott, he has a gift for her that he wants her to open up, but she says no, not right now. Also kind of setting up the idea of the possibility of Colossus leaving. Because for Colossus, he has a boyfriend. There's John Paul, who's at Emma Frost school. And so it's John Paul saying why not go ahead and come with me and stay with me as a way to get away from all that mess happening at that school? And for Colossus, kind of hard to answer that question at the moment. It's also the book kind of leading up to the possibility of the Shadow King finally arriving, because you have the book remind us that Wolverine and Storm are dating, but Wolverine found out that Storm has been writing a play. But for Storm, she's not going to show him the play that she has been working on. Again, leading to the idea of the Shadow King down the road. But now it's time for the funeral. And so when it comes to the funeral, it's pretty sad, right? Because you're now kind of seeing the idea of all these different heroes, the Ultimates. You have the Fantastic Four there, Nick Fury there, you have Charles' past lovers like Moira McTaggart. They're all there right now saying goodbye to Charles Xavier. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Wolverine, Magneto asked him to go to the school of Charles Xavier to kill him, but Wolverine had a change of heart. But the idea that a future version of Wolverine, better known as Cable, was the reason why Charles is dead is kind of like, damn, mission accomplished. Like, yeah, I actually did kill off, Charles Xavier. A future version of me did, but that's still me, just on a different timeline. It's really hard to hear Wolverine kind of go through that. Now, when it comes to Nightcrawler, well, let's not forget, he had a whole mental breakdown. And so for Charles Xavier, he kind of put mental block on the mind of Nightcrawler, keeping him in one place until he was able to kind of help Nightcrawler work through all his issues. Well, the problem is that for Jean Grey, when she goes to check in on Nightcrawler, he's no longer there. So just like that, their medical prisoner, whatever, is officially gone out in the wind. But to kind of close on this chapter, we do switch over to Magneto. And so for Magneto, it's really more of him getting word about what had happened to Charles Xavier. And because this is the ultimate version of Magneto, he's not really upset about the idea of the death of Charles Xavier. Matter of fact, he's happy about it. And also we see him telling everyone, even though Charles is now dead, this does not change the plans we have in motion right now. So, keep going. But right now, leave me alone. I want to be happy about the death of Charles Xavier. Now, when it comes to the final chapter of today's storyline, we do switch back over to Cyclops, Jean Grey, and also Storm. And we kind of find out that for Charles Xavier, what he did was he made sure in the will that everything goes to them three. So they're in charge of the school and all things he left behind as well. And so for me personally, I'm kind of like, this is kind of cool because for Cyclops, he was Charles' first student. Jean Grey, the bond he had with Jean Grey, even though there were some lines crossed. And the idea of Storm kind of, for me personally, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, she has grown a lot since Volume 1, written by Mark Millar. But anyways, it's kind of cool to see these three characters be chosen as the people to carry on Charles' dream, possibly. But like I said earlier, the idea of different people leaving the X-Men are truly happening left to right, starting off with Colossus. And with Colossus trying to leave, it's more him staying with John Paul at Emma Frost's school. But again, it's another member of the team officially gone. Kitty Pryde is gone. Colossus is now gone. And who else is going to leave the X-Men when it comes to the idea of Charles' death? Can the team carry on his legacy? And technically, we kind of get the answer to that question the next section. Wolverine's next to leave. Now, for Wolverine, it's not really him saying goodbye forever. It's really more him saying, listen, I have to go somewhere and kind of figure out my own life real quick. I may or may not come back. But it's really more Wolverine saying, okay, this other character, Sabretooth, keeps saying that he's my son. That's weird. And also, too, apparently my wife's out there somewhere, so he never did kill my wife. So where in the world could she be at? It's Wolverine right now trying to accomplish this whole, mystery behind his past. So he has to leave for the time being. Now, for Cyclops and Jean Grey, this is a tad bit different because, it's the idea that the last couple storylines, Cyclops has been trying to hand over a certain gift to Jean Grey for her birthday. And Jean Grey has been pushing the gift off for the longest time. Well, we kind of find out that it was him asking her to marry him. So yes, in that little gift box is a ring. And for Jean Grey, she does not want to get married. Technically, definitely not right now. But in her mind, she just can't see herself marrying anybody at the moment. And so it's her saying no, but also kind of she has gone through a lot in recent storylines for Ultimate X-Men. So it's her telling Cyclops no, but she still loves him. Now, for Robert Kirkman, we're kind of like the halfway mark to his run on Ultimate X-Men because, like, I think he left at issue number like 96. I could be wrong there. But when it came to Robert Kirkman, what he did was he started building up for the later half of the storyline that he wanted to tell. And so when it comes to Bishop, Bishop did not go back in the future. Bishop stayed in the past. And so it's Bishop right now saying, like, hey, Rogue, hey, Iceman, like, do you guys know that with me being here, maybe, just maybe, I can help you guys train to learn more about your abilities. But for Iceman and Rogue, they're kind of like, we don't care right now. Right now, we're trying to play this game and see who's better, Rogue or me. And so for Bishop, it's kind of like, we can tell already he wants to carry on the X-Men name for Charles Xavier. Now, let's not forget, in the first chapter of the storyline, we had talked about the idea of Nick Fury saying, like, mutants are going to pop up left and right and begin to cause, like, damage across the globe, right? Well, he was kind of incorrect because we do pick up with Pyro. Now, for Pyro, it's the idea that he's tired of the human race hating on mutants. So right now, it's him just blowing up places, right? Now, you do have Pyro be attacked by the Friends of Humanity because, in this reality, they're kind of the same in the main Marvel universe. They just hate on mutants. But you do have, like, Nightcrawler come in the very last second to save Pyro's life. Now, with Nightcrawler doing that, this kind of leads into the underground storyline I'm going to cover later on. The idea of bringing in the Morlocks. Because you have Pyro say, like, oh, you're Nightcrawler. You're one of the X-Men. I'm Pyro, and I have been hanging out with the Morlocks. But as we do transition back over to school of Charles Xavier, we're also kind of picking up with Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Storm. This right here is really important because you're now talking about the idea of them wanting to continue on Charles Xavier's dream, keep the school open. The problem is that it's, well, funding. And this is where Leandra comes in with the Church of the Shi'ar Empire, because with her being there, is her saying, like, she's okay with the idea of funding the school, but she has one request, and that would be the idea of Gerald kind of sticking around. Now, Gerald is her advisor, but let's not forget though, for Gerald, he is part of the Church of the Shi'ar, but also part of the Hellfire Club and trying his best to bring them back in the picture again by possibly using Jean Grey as well. And then you have, like, Robert Kirkman remind us about Angel, because for Angel, he was quote unquote expelled from Charles Xavier's school, but technically he was pushed over to Emma Frost school to be a spy for Charles Xavier. So with Colossus being there, it's kind of like, hey, Angel, it's nice to see you. But for the X-Men, they had no idea what Charles wanted to do with Angel. So of course, for Angel, he knows why he's here, but for Colossus, he has no idea why Angel is there. Now for Bishop, what he does is he goes see the past version of himself. Now, it's not Bishop being kind of like, hey, I'm the future you and here are all the things you know about your life down the road. No, it's Bishop just giving his past self some advice, being like, hey, listen, like, you being in jail right now is going to kind of help you become a better man, but also, like, don't use your powers, pay your debt, and stay out of trouble. And trust me, you'll be okay. And he just leaves. It is kind of like, okay, for us, we know why he did that for. But for his past self, it's kind of like, who was that old man who was trying to give me advice here? That's kind of weird. But I want to go ahead and switch back over to, well, the school again, right? Because you now have Cyclops calling this meeting with the last few people who are there. So Jean Grey, Storm, Bishop, Iceman, and Rogue. It is him right now saying, like, the reason why I called everyone here for is to just basically say, like, this is the end for the X-Men. Let me explain. Because for Cyclops, he does believe that Charles is right, that this should be a school used to teach mutants how to control their abilities. That's correct. But the idea of the X-Men is wrong. To have a military force out there to hopefully bring peace between mutants and humans is the wrong way to go at it. And so it's Cyclops saying, like, from this point on, the X-Men are officially disbanded. Now, for Bishop, he has a major problem with that. It's kind of like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're ruining Charles' dream, his legacy. But it's Cyclops saying, Bishop, if you want to carry on Charles' dream as an X-Men, then go make your own team somewhere else. So just like that, that kind of leads to the idea of a brand new X-Men team coming together. But to close on this storyline, we do jump into the future, right? And we pick up with Cable. Now, when it comes to Cable, it's really more him kind of telling us, like, he's alive for one, but also asking his robot to give reports about what's happening in the past. So the robot says, like, hey, they're right now grieving or their mentor being dead, Charles Xavier, but also, like, they don't believe you died. They believe you're still out there somewhere. So for Cable, it's kind of like, cool. As long as they believe that Charles is dead, that will be great. And so you then have Cable walk into a different room to reveal that, well, Charles Xavier is not dead. He is alive and well. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Ultimate X-Men, guys, I just realized something. Like, we had officially skipped over Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk. I don't know why we did, but like we did. So for me personally, what I'm gonna do is, like, not anytime soon, maybe down the road, I'm gonna go back and recover Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk, because that storyline for me was amazing. But anyways, though, getting back into our coverage over Ultimate X-Men, the main series, I want to cover 3 issues. The first issue is a one-shot, Cliffhangers. The next one is called Underground, and I love that storyline right there because it's really more a huge development for a character like Nightcrawler. And you'll see what I mean here as we go through today's video. And so getting into the Cliffhanger storyline, we do pick up with the idea of Mr. Sinister being dead. Now, this is pretty huge. And the reason why, because back when it came to Brian Vaughn's run on Ultimate X-Men, he had introduced Mr. Sinister in this reality as somebody who was trying to bring in Apocalypse. But he had to kill off a certain number of mutants to kind of bring Apocalypse into this world. Now, we're also kind of left to believe that he was not mentally well. But either way, he was locked up with S.H.I.E.L.D., but he was on suicide watch. Well, apparently, he killed himself. Just like that, he's dead. But we did move on to another situation. Because most of the X-Men villains were all sent over to S.H.I.E.L.D., right? And so when it came to Magneto, he was also sent over to S.H.I.E.L.D. Here's the catch, though, because when it came to the Magnetic North storyline, the real Magneto was able to escape. But you had Mystique stay behind and pretend to be Magneto. And so now we see Mastermind and his girlfriend, whose name I do not know, basically walk in and say, "I Mystique, it's now time for you and I to switch spots. Like, I'll stay here for a while, but the big man, Magneto, he has bigger plans for you somewhere else." And so just like that, Mystique leaves and Mastermind is now pretending to be Magneto. Because remember, guys, for Mastermind, he can play with all 5 of your senses, your smell, your sight, hearing, all of that right there. So right with the guards right now, what they're seeing is Magneto in prison, but in reality, it's Mastermind. Now, a couple of story arcs ago, we had saw the supposed death of Charles Xavier, right? So everyone in the present day truly believed that Charles had died, but in reality, he was taken by Cable into the future. And so when it came to Cyclops, with the idea of him believing that Charles is now dead, he turned the school into an actual school. He disbanded the X-Men, saying the X-Men are no more. And the reason why, because he felt like what Charles was trying to do was not correct. Like, yes, we should try to bring mutants and humans together. But why in the world would you send our military force out there to try to bridge the two parties together? Like, no, the right way to do it is to use a school to teach mutants, but show the world that mutants have the ability to live a life alongside with humans without any kind of struggles. And so we see the school being a school right now. Matter of fact, we see a younger version of Grizzly. We saw the future version of him in the Cable storyline. But yeah, we now have all these different young kids at a school of Charles Xavier. And Toad had also decided to help with the school by working for Cyclops. But let's not forget, the school is also being run or being funded by the Shi'ar Church. And so with that being said, Leandra asked Gerald, her advisor, to help Cyclops and Jean Grey run the school. But in reality, when it comes to Gerald, his main goal at the moment is to bring back the Hellfire Club by most likely using Jean Grey, who is slowly turning to the Phoenix and used her as a way to bring back the Hellfire Club. Matter of fact, he calls up one of his co-workers and we get our first look at Ultimate Shinobi Shaw. Now, his father, Sebastian Shaw, had died a long time ago in our coverage over Ultimate X-Men, but now his son is trying to take over. Here's the thing. He's the boyfriend right now to Emma Frost, but it seems like she has no idea about what's happening right now when it comes to Shinobi and the Hellfire Club. Now, the next section does kind of lead into the second half of this video, the idea of the underground storyline, because for Nightcrawler, in our last video, he ran into Pyro, right? And when it came to Pyro, he had mentioned the fact that there are Morlocks in this reality, a group of mutants who had decided to live underground. And the reason why, because for some mutants, you get your powers, but you stay looking normal. For some mutants, you gain your powers, but you don't stay looking normal. And so when it came to Nightcrawler, hearing the fact that there's mutants like that, like him, out there right now living underground, he has been trying his best to locate the Morlocks. And we see right now that he was able to find them. And so now we switch over to the biggest cliffhanger of this storyline. The idea of Beast being alive is pretty huge and it's so messed up because for Beast, he died a long time ago, back in like Ultimate X-Men New Mutants. So again, a long time ago. We kind of find out that Homeboy is alive, but here is the big catch though, guys. You see, when it came to Beast, when he died, he was brought back to life, right? Okay, cool. But he did have Charles and Nick agree to use Beast as a way to find a cure for the legacy virus, but to also work on other projects as well. It gets even worse, y'all, because when it came to Beast, he felt like he was really communicating with his loved ones, but Charles died. And so with Charles being dead, his mind began to go back to normal and realize that he was never talking to anyone at all. That now everyone else, they believe that he died, but in reality, he's been alive this entire time. And so it's Beast right now expressing his anger like, y'all haven't believed that I was talking to my mother, my father, my friends, but I never was. And they all believe I'm dead, but in reality, I'm alive. But it's Nick saying like, dude, look at what you're doing though. You're trying to find a cure for the legacy virus and working on other projects as well for S.H.I.E.L.D. But again, this storyline is called cliffhangers for a good reason, because we're also kind of getting into the idea of like the next big storyline, the return of Sentinels now being used again on mutants left and right. And we see a young mutant get completely killed off by a Sentinel. But the last cliffhanger and also the ending for the first chapter of today's video is the idea of Storm meeting the Shadow King very soon, because Shadow King, so far, all we know is that he has been, targeting her, going into her mind, scaring her. And so we get the idea that sooner or later, we're gonna see the Shadow King, right? But then when Storm wakes up, there's a knock on her door and she's then confronted by Bishop, who's right now trying to put together a new X-Men team. But this leads into the Ultimate Underground storyline. And for me personally, it's a great storyline for Nightcrawler alone. And let me explain why. Because for Nightcrawler, his character has gone through a lot. Like, guys, when he first appeared in Ultimate X-Men, he was being used as a weapon for Weapon X. Now, he was brought in the X-Men, and of course, you had them all try their best to make him feel, included. But the idea that anger he had inside of him was never properly handled. So all that anger kind of led into a downfall for Nightcrawler, some other issues as well. And so it's him right now wanting a fresh start, a new beginning for his life. And so bam, he found the Morlocks. Here's the thing. When he finds them, they're like, hey, welcome, brother. This is the tunnel. This is the Morlocks. Like, we're one big happy family. But hold on, pause. We got to make sure that you're somebody we can have down here with us. Like, make sure you're good in some kind of area. Like, I don't know, fighting. And so you have Caliban beat down on Nightcrawler. But once you do have Nightcrawler kind of show that he is a capable fighter, the battle does end and he's now being introduced to the leader of the Morlocks, and now will be Sunder. Now, while you have the two meeting, we see that Toad is there as well. leaving us wondering why in the world Toad is there for. Well, because for Cyclops, not forget, he turned the school into an actual school for mutants, and they're getting more and more students left and right. But Toad told him about the Morlocks, how they live underground because when their mutant powers had manifested, it changed their appearance as well. They hid from the rest of the world. And so once he got word about that, he's kind of like, this school is an actual school now. This school can fit 100 people. Let's give the Morlocks a proper home. Like, the idea of them living underground is crazy enough, but also like, let them feel more welcome to live along their people. And so what Cyclops did was he sent Toad down there to see if they would want to take the offer that Cyclops is trying to give, because he couldn't send Jean Grey down there or, Iceman, because one, they look normal, and two, they have like designer clothes. Toad does not look all the way normal. He could try to reason with them and try to reel them in and bring them over to school of Charles Xavier. Now, we're also being reminded about the idea of the Sentinel program being restarted. And so with that program now being brought back in the picture again, we see Pyro trying his best to get away from the Sentinels. Here's the problem though, he's struggling. Now, luckily for him, Storm and Bishop arrive. And once they are able to get rid of that one Sentinel, you then have Bishop say like, hey, Pyro, do you want to join the X-Men? His new X-Men team. So now they have 3 for Bishop's X-Men. But as we do get back over to Nightcrawler, it's him being shown around by Sunder. And for me, honestly, it's kind of cool at first because you have something saying like, yeah, bro, you're a Morlock now. You're one of us. This is great. But here's the thing, because for Sunder, he knows that sooner or later, there's going to be a war between mutants and humans. And that war could be very massive. And sooner or later, that war is going to arrive at their front door. So he wants to make sure the Morlocks are ready to protect their land, right? And so you have Sunder show Nightcrawler around with saying like, you, my friend, will be fighting alongside with us. Now, with all that being said, once you have Nightcrawler mention his backstory, the idea of being an X-Men, he's kind of like, wait, you're an X-Men? Because in his mind, the X-Men are traitors to the mutant race. They are pet mutants to the surface world. And so you have him kind of like wanted to beat down on Nightcrawler. But once you have Kurt explain things to him, for that brief moment, he's like, okay, I believe you. But then Toad appears. He's like, wait, Toad is here? And you're here for the X-Men? So we have 2 spies here? No, y'all both gotta go. And so you have Sunder begin to attack Nightcrawler and also Toad. Now we do switch back over to Bishop, right? And for Bishop, it's him trying to show us, or really it's the book showing us, like where his X-Men team is going to stay at. This unknown location somewhere out in Australia. Now, for Bishop team right now, it's Storm, Pyro, and him. But of course, he has other ideas for his team. And so it's him telling Storm, let's go. We got to find somebody else to join the team. She becomes very important for this team. Now, with Toad and Nightcrawler most likely now being captured by the Morlocks, you have Cyclops freaking out because he sent Toad down there. For the X-Men, they have no idea that Nightcrawler is down there. So because Toad is not answering, it's Scott saying like, hey, Jean and Bobby and Rogue, like, let's go. We gotta go find Toad and make sure he is okay. Because again, he went underground to meet the Morlocks. So they have to go. But the problem is that they no longer have a jet. So unfortunately, they got to go by train and, well, on foot as well. But wrapping up this chapter, wondering who is this important person that Bishop was talking about, right? Well, we kind of find out that it's no other than Dazzler. And for me, this is great because this begins the process of making Dazzler really important Ultimate X-Men that kind of gets ruined at Ultimatum, but it turns her character around in the Ultimate Marvel universe. And so this leads into the next chapter, right? And so as we're getting into the next chapter, we're now picking up with Cyclops' team, in the tunnels, trying to find the home of the Morlocks. The problem is that they are quickly jumped by the Morlocks and really quickly defeated by the Morlocks as well, because Well, it's their home. It's their turf. They know how to fight in the tunnels, unlike our heroes do. Also, they're easily outnumbered. But you did have Hunter Thunder say, like, I'm tired of you X-Men, and I'm tired of your two spies. Now, for Scott, he's kind of wondering, like, you said two spies. Who? Like, who are my two spies? I only know, one of them, that's Toad. Who is the other person? Now, we're also kind of given a few more pages dedicated to show us like Bishop's team coming together slowly. And so we see Storm and Bishop trying to recruit Colossus. Now, for Colossus, it's an automatic no. The dude's all like, listen, I always hated violence. So once I heard that Scott said the X-Men are no more, I was kind of happy with the idea of the X-Men no longer being there. And matter of fact, I began a new life for myself. Got an apartment, got a job, I'm my boyfriend now. Like, everything is easy for me now. Like, can we relax? Leave me alone. I do not want to join the new X-Men team. And you have Storm and also Bishop respect that. Now, when it comes to Angel, we're given another page where it's really more of us seeing Dazzler trying to bring Angel into this new X-Men team, because for them, they dated for a good while at Ultimate X-Men, but then she got stabbed, she was in a coma, she did get properly healed up, but while she was in that coma, Angel got expelled from Charles' school. Now, in reality, it was Charles saying, like, hey, Angel, I'm gonna expel you, but in reality, I'm gonna send you over to Emma Frost School as an undercover spy to watch over that school for me and everything, see what's going on there truthfully. And so he's been there. So he was unable to see his girlfriend while she was in a coma. And when she got healed up, she ran away. And it's her saying, like, I was mad at you, but then I realized that you're innocent. You couldn't come see me. But hey, listen, Bishop is trying his best to put together a new team. Are you down with the idea of joining this new team with me? And he's kind of like, heck yeah. So just like that, Angel joins Bishop's team. But this kind of leads into what I said earlier, that character development, right? Because it's Nightcrawler, Toad, the X-Men. They're fighting against the Morlocks. And the battle goes on for a good amount of pages, but the battle does end when it comes to Nightcrawler snapping the neck asunder. Now, we're kind of left to believe he's not dead. Like, for me, I'm like, oh, he's dead. But you have Callisto say, like, no, he's not dead. He's alive. Like, he's really strong. Like, give him an hour or two or three, maybe four. He'll heal up, come right back and be okay again. But it's Nightcrawler kind of saying, like, what's going on with Morlocks right now is not okay. Like, he's not saying Saunders a bad leader, but it's the ways he's been teaching that may not be the right way for the Morlocks to live in this world. But it's him also saying, like, the Morlocks right now are just waiting for an attack to happen. They're only preparing for attacks. They're now preparing themselves for other kind of things to happen in this world. And so it's Nightcrawler saying, that's incorrect. We got to fix this, guys. And Callisto hearing those words kind of like, you know what? This might lead into a new leader for the Morlocks. And so this kind of leads into a few more things happening as we get to the closing parts of the storyline. Like, for example, you do have, Bishop team arrive back at the base with Angel and Dazzler, but you have Bishop want to talk to Dazzler because to him, it's kind of like Angel was not part of his plan. But it's her saying, like, no, that man is more of an X-Men than I am. And also, if he goes, I go. And for Bishop, he said earlier, Dazzler is very important for his plan. He can't afford the idea of losing her. Another thing that happened is that you do have Cyclops and his team get back to school, right? Yeah, everyone kind of going their separate ways. And for not Rachel Summers, but Jean Grey, she does tell Scott, like, I need some time alone. We also see her, again, kind of losing her grip on reality and seeing another example of the idea of the Phoenix possibly taking over, right? But after that, we see that someone else had joined the school. It's Bessie Braddock, or really more Psylocke. And so Psylocke is also finally back in the book again, right? So things being changed left and right when it comes to Ultimate X-Men. But the biggest ending for me is that for Callisto, she heard the words of Nightcrawler and she kind of agreed with everything he is saying. Like, it's time for a change. It's time for a better future for the Morlocks, a better leader possibly. And so she says, Nightcrawler, you are now the leader. of the Morlocks. Okay, so getting into our coverage over Ultimate X-Men, we're going to pick up with the Sentinel storyline. Now, this storyline for me, it's pretty cool because it introduces Bishop X-Men team. Now, I've been saying this for a while. Like, when it came to Robert Kirkman's run, his run for me, like, probably the best run on Ultimate X-Men. Like, I like Mark Millar's, I like Brian Vaughn, but for me, it's like Robert Kirkman's run was a tad bit better than their run, but also like, I feel if he didn't leave Marvel and also the idea of Ultimatum did not happen, there's a possibility he could have had a longer run with more ideas being brought in for the world of Ultimate X-Men. Anyways, getting into the Sentinel storyline, but now we pick up with Wolverine. Now, when it comes to Wolverine, he had left the X-Men right after the idea of Charles Xavier dying in the Cable storyline. And really, for Wolverine, he has been trying his best to find some answers because he had heard from Sabretooth that one, Sabretooth's son, but also the idea that Wolverine's wife could most likely still be alive out there somewhere in the world. And so it's Wolverine right now just trying his best to locate these answers. But it's at a bar, kind of chill, get a few drinks in. The thing is, Wolverine's healing factor prevents him from getting drunk. Now, the bar owner must realize, or he had to realize, that Wolverine must be a mutant because Homeboy is drinking a lot and he is still A-okay. So for the bar owner, he wants to go ahead and shoot Wolverine to kill him. Now, as we all know, for Wolverine, he has a healing factor, so it prevents him from getting killed off by the bar owner. But Wolverine does get a tad bit angry. He wants to kill the guy. But you then have Bishop and Storm arrive to bring Wolverine into Bishop's own new X-Men team, where you do have Wolverine agree to join, but as he does leave, he does cut off the fingers of the bar owner who had tried to kill him. But I want to go ahead and switch over to a new character, and that would be Strife. You see, with the idea of Cable not being the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, and really be a future version of Wolverine, it allows Kirkman to kind of play around with the idea of other characters like Strife, for example, because in the main Marvel Universe, Strife is the clone of Cable, but in this reality, he's not. And so we see Strife right now being the leader of the Mutant Liberation Front. Now, he did the same thing over in the main Marvel Universe, but things going a tad bit differently here, where you have him right now at a crowd of mutants who are very upset about the idea of how mutants are being treated, but also kind of feeding off the energy of the death of Charles Xavier as well. And so what he wants to do is supposedly lead an uprising against the human race. Now, while having this meeting, out of nowhere, Sentinels arrive and begin to shoot down on all the mutants in the building. Strife tried his best at first, kind of say, guys, fight back, we can do this, but then he tells Zero to get him the heck out of there fast and quick. But I want to pick up where our last video left off at, the idea of Psylocke coming back into the picture again. Because for Psylocke, she was really used a lot when it came to Mark Millar's run on Ultimate X-Men, but then after he left the book, we didn't see her again. Not in Brian Michael Bendis' run, not in Brian Vaughn's run. Like, she had almost completely left, right? And so the idea of Kirkman bringing her back into the picture again, for me personally, is kind of cool, right? Now, when it came to Psylocke, she had quote-unquote died by the hands of Charles Xavier's son, but her mind was placed in a different body. Now, we also learn here that for Psylocke and another character known as Syndicate, they were kind of like spies for Charles Xavier, went on different missions to bring down different organizations out there, like the Hellfire Club, but also the Fenris twins as well. And so for Psylocke, once she had realized that she was no longer hearing from Charles Xavier, she was assigned or told to come here and join the X-Men. Except when she gets here, she finds out the X-Men are no more because, again, after Charles had died, Cyclops said, no more X-Men. Now the school is gonna be an actual school. And so for Psylocke, she's very upset about the idea of what Cyclops did to Xavier's dream. But now we kind of go ahead and switch over to Bishop's team. Now, for Bishop, it's him saying, like, listen, guys, when it came to Cable, he believed that Charles' actions had led into our dark future. Now, with Charles being quote unquote dead, the timeline is going to change. With the timeline changing, that means I cannot remember or I can't be trusted to remember anything that happens in this timeline anymore because everything's going to change now. But I do know one thing. This world still needs an X-Men team. Like, for example, right now, we have Sentinels out there again hunting down mutants. We must come together to bring them down and figure out who in the world had restarted that program all over again. Now, for Wolverine, he's kind of down for the X-Men, but he tells Bishop this. As soon as you cross Storm the wrong way, do anything to her, I'm going to kill you. I am going to kill you, Bishop. And it kind of reminds us that for Storm and Wolverine, they have this relationship right now in Ultimate X-Men. But this leads into my favorite moment, the idea of Dazzler. This is why I say, guys, when it comes to Kirkman's run, he did a lot of work on a lot of different characters. And for me, Dazzler is another example because it's Bishop saying, like, Dazzler, you don't realize how powerful you truly are. Like, you think right now your powers is to be used to create light, and that's really it. No, there's air molecules around you. And what you're doing right now, you're basically making them split, making them explode, which technically means that you can do so much more with your abilities. You can cause massive explosions if you wanted to. That's how powerful you truly are, Dazzler. And I'm kind of like, yo, this is great for her character development. Like, yes. But while you do have the X-Men right now just hanging out in Bishop's new little base and everything, you did have Bishop kind of mention that they need one more person for their team. That one more person right now is currently at the school of Charles Xavier. So it's him saying like, hey, you know, Storm, we got to head back real quick to the mansion because we need to pick up one more person who can possibly help us down the road. Now, as we do transition back over to Strife, is Strife right now saying, listen, the last attack done by the Sentinels, it had been planned. It's him saying that there's a possibility there's a traitor in their group. But it's him right now saying like, listen, we're all in this safe house right now. This is our last big meeting. Sooner or later, you guys go to different groups and the uprising is going to begin. The downfall for the human race. But now we're kind of able to see like who is Bishop's last person he's trying to recruit? Well, it's Psylocke. And for me personally, again, it's Kirkman saying, let's use all these different characters. And so it's Psylocke saying like, yeah, I'll go ahead and join your team. Now, we're also getting a small hint here that for Bishop, he kind of had this special thing for Psylocke. We don't know what yet, but we're kind of like, hey, do you know her more well than the others? Like, how and why? But anyways, when it comes to Bishop and his team and also Psylocke, they're watching the news and they realize that City Hall is right now being attacked by a group of mutants. And to make things even worse, a group of course, Sentinels had arrived as well. So now it's an all-out war in the streets of New York. And it's now time for Bishop's X-Men team to step in and stop this battle. But then we also kind of figure out something, like, for real, who is behind the idea of the relaunching of the program of the Sentinels? You kind of find out that it's a combination of two different parties. One of the parties is Trask. The other one, of course, being again, the Fenris twins. They're also being brought back into the picture again for this particular storyline. Now, as we transition into the second chapter, we're now picking up with the idea of Beast trying to escape. And let me explain, because when it came to Beast, he died, or supposedly died, back in Brian Michael Bendis' run on Ultimate X-Men, a very short run. But Beast had quote unquote died. To only find out later on that he actually survived, that he did die, but they were able to bring him back to life. And then Charles and Nick said, you know what, let's keep Beast under wrap. Let's have him work on the legacy virus, but leave everyone left to believe that Beast is dead. But also for Beast, he had believed the entire time he was communicating with everyone out there like Storm and his parents, but he really wasn't. So when Charles died, Beast's mind went back to normal and he realized that he had been tricked and now being controlled. And so his Beast right now saying, I'm getting the heck out of this shield base to find my friends. But now we're able to switch over to Bishop's team. And we're seeing Bishop's team just fighting against the Sentinels like it's nothing, right? But also small things are happening in this battle kind of tell us, hey, something big is coming down the road. Like, for example, the idea of the Shadow King. Because for Kirkman, he has been hinting at the Shadow King for a good while. And so in the middle of the battle for Storm, she hears the Shadow King in her mind, and it makes her stop mid-battle and kind of crash on the ground. Now, for Dazzler, it's her moment, because again, we had just learned that she is able to cause small explosions when it comes to air molecules, right? And so for Dazzler, she's kind of like, you know what? It's my time to shine. And she causes massive explosions to take out at least 3 or 4 Sentinels in a matter of seconds, kind of showing how powerful she truly is. But this leads us over to the conversation because, again, for Bishop's team, they're trying to bring down those robots, but also protect the Mutant Liberation Front. And so for Bishop, he has a conversation with Strife. And he tells Strife, like, listen, I'm down to protect mutants, but you guys are technically terrorists. You are not doing the right thing to help mutants out, making things even harder for mutants. Now, is Strife saying, how dare you? Because the thing is, here you are right now protecting these humans. These humans are the reason why Charles is dead. Now, we already know that's not the case. It was quote unquote Cable. And matter of fact, you have Bishop say that. But it's Strife saying like, but who still put everything in position to allow the chance to Charles to die? Again, it's the human race, not the mutants. And so it's Strife saying like, no matter what, humans have to go. It's now time for a change. Now, in the middle of the whole entire conversation, Pyro agrees with Strife and leaves with Strife. So just like that, Pyro is now off the X-Men team. But once you do have Bishop's X-Men team get back over to his base, you did have Psylocke say like, hey, it was me who kind of pushed Pyro in that direction. So now they have somebody inside when it comes to the Mutant Liberation Front. But it's also Bishop saying, that's cool and all, but we got to figure out who in the world is right now leading this whole brand new Sentinel program. And so for Bishop, the man got a plan. Now, for Cyclops and Jean Grey, they have been kind of distant towards one another for a really good reason why. Really more Jean Grey towards Cyclops, because for Jean Grey, it's the whole idea of the Phoenix. And so for Jean Grey, she's kind of like, listen, I need some space because as time goes by, her mind kind of sees more things around her that only she can see. Like, for example, the idea of the goblins. They appear around her and she actually talks to them. But while doing that, the Phoenix also appears as well, telling her to allow her in her mind, to embrace her. She has all the answers that Jean Grey is looking for. But again, only Jean Grey can see it, it seems like. But outside her window, she's being watched by Beast. Now, part of Bishop's plan and Wolverine's involved's plan was to attack just one random Sentinel. And the reason why, because once all that damage is done, it has to go back to base to get repaired, right? And so for Bishop Wolverine and the rest of Bishop's X-Men team, they can follow that robot back to where it goes and kind of figure out who is behind everything. And Bishop's plan does work out. You have the entire X-Men team head over to where like the supposed Sentinels are being built at. The problem is that when our heroes arrive, Bishop is instantly blasted by the Fenris twins. And so we're kind of like, okay, cool. We now officially know they're behind everything, but why in the world would they build robots to attack the mutant race for? And so as we get into the third chapter, it's now it's Bishop's X-Men team, but Bishop got taken down in the last chapter. So now it's Wolverine trying his best to bring down the twins. The problem is that they blast him down just as bad they did Bishop. So just like that, 2 X-Men down. But you didn't have the twins go out of their way to also activate more Sentinels, like almost every single one of them in the base right now to attack our heroes. But for Pyro, with him now being with Strife, you have Strife say, like, listen, I know that you're a spy. I know you were sitting here to kind of watch over us and everything, right? Listen, we have nothing to hide here. So go ahead, walk around, gather intel, and take that intel back to your X-Men team. Because I want them to realize that we're not bad people, that we are good people, and they should try to work with us when it comes to protecting the mutant race. But getting back over to the Beast storyline, it's Beast right now like still sitting outside the school of Charles Xavier. Now, he also stole equipment from S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. So they were able to track him down with that stolen equipment. But it's Nick saying like, Beast, what in the world are you thinking right now? Like, they think you are dead. How in the world do you think they're going to take the idea of you still being alive? It can go south very quickly. But it's Beast saying like there's one person he knows he can talk to and everything's going to work out. And that will be Storm, because before Beast had died, they were dating a long time in Ultimate X-Men. And so it's him saying like, my ex-girlfriend will believe the idea of why I was quote unquote killed off, and reality why, I didn't come back to her at all, because I was being hidden by Charles Xavier and also Nick Fury. But it's also Beast saying that he realized that knowing Nick Fury, Nick lied to him about the idea of the legacy virus. Beast now truly believes that there's a possibility that he had helped create the legacy virus in the Ultimate Marvel universe. But either way, Beast is then able to escape from S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents that easily. But you also have Jean Grey want to be held by Cyclops, right? Because again, the whole idea of the Phoenix. As a matter of fact, as he's holding her, we see her eyes being this bright color, kind of hinting at the idea of the Phoenix getting closer and closer of taking over Jean Grey's body. But while you have all that happening over there, right, for Bishop's X-Men team, they're still trying their best to fight against an army of Sentinels. But it's kind of cool here because you do have almost every single member, minus Bishop, being able to kind of regroup and then be able to bring down all of these different robots. Now, with them being able to do that, they're kind of like, cool, you know what? Let's go ahead and shift our focus back on the twins. Where in the world did they go to? We got to find them because we have to go ahead and shut down this entire place. But getting back over to that Pyro storyline is us seeing Pyro right now still with Strife, right? Now with Strife, he had called for another meeting, except for this meeting is Strife saying right now that it's still time for the mutant race to rise up and fight against the humans. Now, it's also him saying like, we deserve to be equal with humans, not kill them off, but at the same time, he still wants to go out of his way to do different kinds of attacks. Now, while the meeting goes on, Strife walks away and tells Zero, another mutant, to teleport him away. And you have Pyro see that kind of like, wait, why in the world is he leaving right now for? Where in the world is he going? And right after you have Strife leave, once again, more Sentinels appear to attack the mutant race in that area. But getting back over to Bishop's team, we're seeing Wolverine going at Berserker Rage, right? He killed off an army of like Sentinels, but once doing that, he's told stop. And he turns around and realizes the twins were able to get their hands on Psylocke. Now, things go south because now she's a hostage. And so if anyone makes a move, they're going to kill her off. But then you have Bishop get up. And guys, like I said earlier, when it came to Bishop, when he saw Psylocke, he acted a tad bit differently, right? Here's the reason why. Because in his future, Psylocke and him were a married couple. So he says, get your hands off my wife. Now, in the opening section for part 4, we see Beast arriving where Strife had led his whole entire group at. That's right now being attacked by, well, Sentinels. And so you have Pyro at the very last second get saved by Hank McCoy. Now, this right here becomes very important, but at the very end of this chapter. But getting back over to Bishop's X-Men team, this leads to everyone kind of freaking out like, yo, hold up. This man has said that Psylocke is his wife. Now, for most of the X-Men, they know that Bishop's from the future. They're kind of like, So I'm guessing somehow in the future, y'all two get together. Okay, cool, we got it. But the problem is, like, for the twins are like, she's kind of young and you're really old. Like, this is really weird. Like, it's all completely weird right now. But for Bishop, he's very serious because in his future, Psylocke died. That was his wife. And so you have Psylocke go out of her, sorry, not Psylocke. You have Bishop go out of his way to use his powers to kill off the twins. Just like that, they are dead. Now for Storm, she's kind of ticked off. She's like, dude, we don't kill. We're the X-Men. We don't kill at all. Now Wolverine's kind of like, hey, it had to be done, you know? But while you're everyone talking, you did have Angel realize somebody else is now arriving. And that would be Strife. Now, once our heroes realize it's Strife, you didn't have Trask arrive as well. And our heroes realize, oh, wait, get it now. I get it now. Y'all work with the twins. So all of y'all were working together, and you did have Psylocke go in the mind of Strife. Now, with her doing that, she discovers that when it came to the twins, they wanted more money, right? But how to get more money? Bam, here comes Trask. He has some new designs for his robots and everything, right? But when it came to twins, they realized that for the American government, they want to make sure that they have weapons to use against mutants just in case things do pop off. But the thing is, they want to get money now. So they brought in Strife. Say, hey, Strife, go ahead and start your own organization where you're going to have a huge group of mutants being upset about the idea of how they're being treated by humans. And once you have these mutants do different kind of terrorist attacks, it'll then show the American government, hey, you know what? We need some more weapons. Here comes Twins and Trask with the whole idea of new designs of Sentinels. And so just like that, the entire plan came together. But when Charles died, their timeline got pushed up. And so, bam, just like that, for Psylocke, she now has everything. But everything goes even worse or south. And the reason why, because, well, Strife activates a failsafe. Now, with him activating that failsafe, that also means that now all these different Sentinels are now going to head over to where the Mutant Liberation Front is at, and then try to kill them all first. But once they kill off that whole entire group right there, they'll then go on a killing spree to kill all mutants across, most likely, the globe. And so you have Bishop say, all right, Angel, you stay here with Trask and make sure he is able to shut down all these Sentinels, while we, rest of the team right now, will go out of our way to protect who we can over at the meeting for the Mutant Liberation Front. And so this kind of leads into the big ending for this chapter, because yes, you do have the X-Men arrive. They do fight against the army of Sentinels left and right. And you do have Angel seeing Trask then be able to shut down all the different robots. Now, of course, he had to blow up the entire base that he was hiding in, and he said, you know what? I want to die here because there's so much blood on my hands. And so for Angel, he does leave in time, yes, but with that all happening, all the robots shut down. But at the very last second, as one robot about to crush Storm, you have Beast go out of his way to save her and also Dazzler. And Storm realized that Beast is alive, and Wolverine, he already knows. With him being alive, that means Storm is no longer going to be his girl. It's now going to go back over to Beast and Storm. But while everyone kind of figuring out how in the world Beast is alive, you have Bishop walk away. And here's the reason why. Because we come to find out here that Bishop has been the entire time working with Cable, and everything is coming together. Beast return, Dazzler power upgrade, like everything is coming together. And so now we're able to get into the final chapter, right? Now, when we do, we pick up in the future again. And we pick up with Cable. And so when it comes to Cable, it's him freaking out because his base now being attacked by an unknown enemy. And so for Cable, he runs over to Charles Xavier. Now, for Charles, he's kind of like, what in the world's going on right now? But it's also Charles finding out that Cable is just future Wolverine, but also apparently Cable had fixed Charles's spine. So Charles has the ability to walk. He's kind of like, hey man, we got to get out of here now and fight back. So let's go. But back in the present day, what we're seeing at the moment is really more Storm freaking out because here's Beast, a man that she believed that died, a man she used to love for a very long time is now standing right in front of her. And then you have Bishop say, hey, we gotta go. Cops are arriving, let's leave. But it's also Beast wondering like, will Storm be able to handle this kind of reveal? While you have all that happening over there, right? For Cyclops, his school, and Emma Frost school, they're right now playing a good old game of baseball. So a good old classic X-Men thing to do, right? But you didn't have Emma Frost kind of ask Jean Grey, like, hey, Jean, have you seen my boyfriend? Like, Shinobi Shaw? And Shinobi is right now with Gerald. Let's not forget though, when it comes to Gerald, he is secretly working with the Hellfire Club. And Shinobi also as well. So it's kind of like, what are these two right now and trying to cook up at the moment? But while all that's happening over there, we then shift back over to Bishop's X-Men team. We kind of continue that trend where is everyone trying to figure out like, is this really Beast? Now, once you do have Psylocke read his mind, you have Wolverine smell Beast, it's kind of like, yeah, this is the man, right? But at the same time, still gotta play it safe. But you didn't have Bishop say, in my timeline, Beast was around. So he's around, he's here right now, then that's our boy right there, Beast. And so you have everyone kind of realize this is really Beast. But for Storm, she still can't handle the idea of him being alive right now at this moment. So she walks away again. Now, while she is walking away, that leads into Bishop explaining things to Beast about the idea of what Nick Fury did. Legacy Virus was another attempt done by Nick Fury to find a way to continue on the legacy of Steve Rogers. You see, in the Ultimate Marvel universe, when it comes to Nick Fury and this reality, he's always trying to find a way to like reproduce what was done when it came to Steve Rogers. You have the Oz formula, you have the legacy virus, all these different kinds of ways. But for the legacy virus to have a bit different, it used the DNA of Beast. Now, the thing was, it was going to work in Bishop's future on humans, but it was deadly on mutants. So the dark future where Bishop comes from, when it came to Nick Fury, he had no choice but to try to use the legacy virus to get rid of one particular enemy. It didn't work, but it did kill off a huge chunk of the mutant race. And so the idea of Beast leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. may have helped the idea of stopping the legacy virus. But I want to go ahead and shift back over to Psylocke because she just found out that Bishop said, hey, that's my wife. Because in the future, again, these two became a couple, right? And so it's her kind of wondering, what in the world is going on here? And he said, listen, that's my bad, but my future, we were a couple. We were married. Now, it's not me trying to marry you again right now. I'm old, you're young. But there's a younger me out there that one day you're going to find, and you two will come together again. And I'll try my best to not make things awkward. I might stare at you, I might smile at you, but I'm not going to make a move on you. But now that kind of leads into the wind down of the storyline because for Gerald and also for Shinobi, they do try to attack Jean Grey to knock her out, abduct her, and get her the heck out of there. But the Phoenix comes out and she says, I know you're part of the Hellfire Club and I know your man had killed your father, Sebastian, but I'll leave you two alive so that you'll then have the ability to relay a message to the rest of your people. And then the entire bathroom just explodes. Now, we're also kind of getting this quick page where we do see Beast and Storm kind of like coming together. Like, it's her overcoming everything that happened to her in the last few hours. And we see Beast and her kind of get back together. So Wolverine is once again single, but also I want to go back over to Jean Grey and Cyclops. It's very important right here because for Jean Grey, she did truly believe that what Gerald told her, it was all in her mind. The idea of the Phoenix, these goblins, it was all in her mind. Now she knows that most likely that's not the case. It's the idea the Phoenix is real. And sooner or later, the Phoenix is going to take over Jean Grey's body. And we're still not done with these cliffhangers because we do once again pick up with Emma Frost. And we kind of find out This entire time, I like this so much. The entire time, Emma Frost was part of the Hellfire Club, and she's very upset about the plan the Hellfire Club tried to do with Shinobi and also Gerald. And so it's kind of like, okay, dang, that is pretty wild. Okay. But to close on this storyline, we do shift over to Cable and also Charles Xavier, where is Cable right now saying, like, listen, like, you understand, I have to train you. I have to get you ready for what's to come down the road. You have no idea what is about to happen to you and the rest of the world in your timeline. And for Charles, he asks, who is it? And we get a better glimpse of what could be ultimate apocalypse. Okay, so it's time for us to get back into our coverage over Ultimate X-Men, right? And guys, we're almost done. We only have like 4 more videos to do. This one, we have the Apocalypse storyline. We also then have the Wolverine drug storyline, and then Ultimatum tie-ins. And that's really it. Now, when it comes to Kirkman's run, we only got like 2 more stories to cancel. Not cancel. 2 more stories to cover, which is Shadow King, this video, and the next one. Now, guys, real quick, I understand that there are love for the different writers on Ultimate X-Men. For some fans out there, it was Mark Millar's run. For some fans out there, it was Brian Michael Bendis. And for some, it was good old Brian Vaughan. You know, that's the things about comics, guys. Like, you can always have your favorite and your least favorite. And the thing is, it could be different from other people's opinions. But when it comes to me personally, I have to say it's Kirkman and like Brian Michael Bendis, who are like my favorite 2 writers on Ultimate X-Men. And then like Mark Millar, and then finally Brian Vaughan. Now, for me, it's not saying like, actually, you know what? No, there is one more writer who comes after Kirkman, but it's not fair for him because he only had like 2 storylines. He only brought in because of Ultimatum. So I really can't count him. And guys, I don't hate Brian Vaughn's run. It's a great run. It's just that I fell more in love with the other writers instead. With that being said, when it comes to Kirkman though, getting into the Shadow King storyline, we do pick up with the idea of him trying to wrap up some loose ends. And let me explain, because in an earlier storyline, I want to say it was the tail end of Brian Vaughn's run. I think it was actually. You had the return of Dr. Cornelius, who was also part of Weapon X. He also had brought back Sabretooth as well at the end of his run. And when it came to those 2 characters, they were kind of working together on a brand new experiment where you had Sabretooth being able to get a small sample of Wolverine's like body over to Dr. Cornelius to work on some kind of secret experiment. And that took place a while ago. But you also had Sabretooth kind of play around with the idea of telling Wolverine that he was his son. And so in the opening pages of the storyline, we see that for Bishop, he had told Wolverine what Dr. Cornelius was up to, right? Like, so you had the whole entire Bishop X-Men team head over to where they were hiding out at. Dr. Cornelius, Sabretooth. And so when they got there, they found out that, well, it seemed like Cornelius was trying to clone Wolverine, but of course, a bunch of rejects had happened. But also for Cornelius, he began to experiment on himself as well with Wolverine's DNA. And so he turned to some kind of weird creature. But either way, as the battle goes on, you have our heroes being able to kind of defeat both Sabretooth and Cornelius. Now, something else to mention is that the idea of Beast's return. And just in case anybody had forgotten like what happened to Beast, when it came to Beast in the Ultimate X-Men run and Brian Michael Bendis run, Beast had quote unquote died in the Ultimate X-Men New Mutant storyline. And he was dead for like 40 issues, right? And then out of nowhere, by Kirkman, he brought Beast back to life. Now, with Beast coming back to life, we found out that Nick Fury and Charles Xavier has supposedly kept Beast locked away to work on the legacy virus, find a cure for the legacy virus. Now, in reality, it was Nick Fury trying a different way to recreate the super soldier serum. Now, Beast was able to escape. The problem was that for the X-Men, they had believed the entire time that Beast was dead. Storm, his girlfriend, had moved on and began to somewhat date Wolverine. And so the idea of Beast being back there is kind of like, ooh, make things a little more complicated. Like, who will she choose? Beast or Wolverine? And so when you have our heroes fighting, you have Storm run over and make sure that Wolverine is okay. And for Beast, he kind of sees something. He's all like, oh, I can tell. While I was gone, y'all two kind of got together. And while you do have everybody go back over to the base that Bishop provided for his X-Men team, for Wolverine, he wants to check in on Storm. When he walks in, he sees Storm right now laying in bed with Beast. Wolverine walks away, but Wolverine's kind of like, we're not official, but I want to make it official now. Now for Beast, he does question Storm, and it's her kind of like, yeah, he was there for me. He helped me out in some very tight situations, things like that. And it's her kind of hinting at the idea that she's moving on from Wolverine, but going back over to Beast. But see, when it came to Beast, he puts her to sleep, right? So when she wakes up, we begin the process of bringing in the Shadow King, Amal Farouk. And I really hope I pronounced that name correctly. Now, his origin here is completely different from his main Marvel Universe counterpart, but it's also occurred in saying like, let's add a tad bit more to the origin of Storm with his character. Because we do learn here that for the Shadow King, he was a regular human who was close to Storm in the early days of her life in Texas. Let me explain, because we kind of saw this in Mark Millar's run, also Brian Vaughn's run. You see, when it came to Storm, she was a thief, but working alongside another character known as Lady Deathstrike. It's kind of told to us in the date night storyline. The two of them worked together, but unfortunately had to go their separate ways when she got hit by a vehicle. Not Storm, Lady Deathstrike. But now it's Kirkman saying no. There was a third character, and that would have been the Shadow King. Back then, all three of them would have worked together to steal different things across El Paso. But on top of that, when it came to Shadow King, he was a mutant, a psychic mutant. And so for him and Storm, they kind of had a bond with one another. He would be able to enter her mind and kind of ease her mind when she's going through different things. The problem was that one night, while being in the sky, she lost control of her abilities and she had struck him with lightning. And so with that happening, it put him in some kind of coma. Not some kind. He was in a coma. But that led into him becoming the Shadow King. Let me explain. Because while being in that coma, his mind had entered the mindscape. But while being there, he met different kind of creatures like the Brood. So just like that, the Brood are in the mindscape, not out there in space somewhere in the Ultimate Marvel universe. While being in the mindscape, for the Shadow King, he began to learn more about his abilities and what he can do from the mindscape there as well too. And so as the story goes on, we see him then being able to kind of bring everything to life, it seems like. Like right now is Storm being attacked by the Shadow King, being attacked by the Brood. Now, luckily for her, the X-Men do arrive, Bishop's X-Men team. And so it does seem like they may have a fighting chance to defeat the Shadow King. But in a matter of seconds, in a matter of panels, you then have the Shadow King say, no, you guys are not going to win. And just like that, every single member of Bishop's X-Men team besides Storm disappears, leaving her alone with the Shadow King once again. Now, this is Kirkman saying like, listen, I got to make sure to at least put him on the back burner for right now, just in case somebody else down the road wants to use this character. And unfortunately, no one ever does again. You have the Shadow King kind of want to know, like, why did she leave him behind? Because it was her power, her lightning bolt that hit him and put him in a coma and left him there in the hospital. And then, of course, the mindscape and him become the Shadow King. But it's her saying like, no, I found out your secret. Just like that, he began to shatter because we kind of find out that she found out that he was cheating on her with Yukio, Lady Deathstrike, her best friend. And so the hurt of finding out what this man was doing behind her back, but also the idea of not being able to control her abilities Well, unfortunately, it led up to that moment right there. And so just like that, he's shattered because in his mind, he believed that she was at fault for what happened to him. But his own actions broke him. His own actions broke them apart. His own actions turned him into the Shadow King. Now, again, she's still somewhat at fault here, right? But again, she was unable to control her abilities. But also the pain of him or her finding out that he was cheating on her did not help either. And so we kind of find out that the whole entire scene right now was all being played in her mind. So once she does defeat him and once she does wake up, she's then confronted by the X-Men. And we kind of find out that when Beast came back to the room, he realized there was something wrong with Storm. It seemed like she was in some kind of coma, and she was, because she was battling against the Shadow King. And so for Psylocke and Jean Grey, when they tried their best to read the mind of Storm, they couldn't find anything. They couldn't see anything because her mind was blocked off by the Shadow King in the mindscape. But then it seemed like her mind overpowered whatever was happening to her. Of course, again, the Shadow King. So everyone's just relieved that she is okay. But this leads into the ending of the storyline where you have Storm be confronted by Wolverine. This is Wolverine coming to Storm and wanting to make things official. But she says no, because Wolverine is okay for her, but not good for her. What she needs is someone like Beast. And the thing is, like, Wolverine was there for her, right? Like, he was in her corner, but he was not fully available for her. And that was she needed. Someone there be by her side all the time, open up to her all the time. But the thing was, he wasn't. He always kept her at arm's length. And of course, only when Beast comes back is when we want to try to make things different between him and her. And so it's her saying, like, you're not good for me. And Beast is, but like, I need him right now. But it's also her deleting her play about the Shadow King, trying her best to move on from her past. And it's also her kind of hinting at the idea like Wolverine and Shadow King are kind of like, they're both not good for her. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. Okay, so yeah, guys, we are finally here. We are finally at the end of Robert Kirkman's run on Ultimate X-Men and getting into the whole Apocalypse storyline. Man, I just could not wait to sit down and cover this storyline because for me personally, like, it's not really the greatest Ultimate X-Men storyline. For me, that's still Blockbuster and also New Mutants, but for me personally, I still kind of like the ending to his run and also kind of introducing the idea of Apocalypse. Now, I do have one problem at the very beginning of this storyline, and that would be the idea of Bishop's X-Men team arriving to the school of Charles Xavier because Cyclops and Jean Grey had called him. Now remember guys, when it came to this point in Ultimate X-Men, when Charles Xavier had quote unquote died, you had Cyclops say the X-Men are no more and turn the school into an actual school for mutants to go to. And so with that happening, him also disbanding the X-Men, you had Bishop say, you know what, I'll carry on Charles Xavier's dream and form his own X-Men team. Just like that, bam. Now the thing was that in an earlier storyline, we had heard about the idea of Mr. Sinister committing suicide while being held by S.H.I.E.L.D. as a prisoner. Come to find out, he had faked the suicide, escaped the morgue, and now out there in the world somewhere again. And for Cyclops, he remembers how dangerous that Mr. Sinister was in the past. So it's him saying like, Bishop, you got out of your way, find that guy and bring that guy down before he kills off more mutants, because he believes if he kills off a certain number of mutants, he'll bring in his master. Of course, the idea of Apocalypse. So you have Bishop say, hey Scott, don't worry, we got this. Let's go now, X-Men. And so that kind of leads us right over to see Mr. Sinister right now in the sewers of New York. Now, of course, you already know where he's going to find the Morlocks. Now, here's the thing, because by this point in our coverage over Ultimate X-Men, when it came to Robert Kirkman, what he did was he put Nightcrawler with the Morlocks and became their leader. And so we see him right now just using his powers to force a young mutant to show him where the Morlocks are hiding out at. And so once he does find location, it is open season for him. He's kind of like, all right, guns out. It's time to take some souls to get some mutants killed off for my master. And this becomes an actual problem for the Morlocks, because you are now talking about the idea of some guy who just going around shooting folks left and right, but also has the ability to control your mind and force you to do different things for him. So the big hitters like Sunder off the board because Mr. Sinister says, hey, I'm gonna need you to help me out. Find me some targets right now so that I can kill them off for my master. And just like that, you have Sonder beginning to help him out. And for Nightcrawler, really can't fight right now. His main goal is to get folks the heck out of there. Now, luckily for Nightcrawler, the X-Men do arrive. The problem is that you have Bishop say, hey, I need like 3 of my guys to help Nightcrawler out when it comes to getting people out of here, and the rest of them stay here and fight against Mr. Sinister. So as the battle goes on, it's kind of like, okay, maybe the X-Men have a chance to defeat, Mr. Sinister. They don't, because this leads into the big moment, the death of Angel. Let me explain. Because let's not forget, in this reality, Dazzler and also Angel, they were a couple, right? And so once you have her be put in danger, he's kind of like, hey, that's my girlfriend. I gotta protect her, right? But the thing is, while holding on to Mr. Sinister, he now becomes an easy target for Mr. Sinister. Now, for Dazzler, who had learned to use her powers in different kinds of ways, wants to help protect her boyfriend. And so while trying to do that, she misses. But here's the reason why. Because of Bishop. He hits Dazzler, which of course makes her miss, and then you have Sinister then being able to turn around, shoot Angel, just like that. Angel is dead. Now, here becomes the next big problem though. Because Wolverine saw what happened when it came to Bishop forcing Dazzler to miss when it came to protecting Angel. And so for Wolverine, he looks at Bishop as a traitor, goes out of his way to kill off Bishop. So just like that, in the first chapter of the storyline, we got X-Men dying left and right. Angel, Bishop gone off the board. Things get even worse because you did have everyone realize, Mr. Sinister is missing. Now, here's the thing. He has enough souls or killed enough people for his master. And so you now have Sinister slowly changing into, well, you already know, Apocalypse. And just like that, we now have our first look at the ultimate version of Apocalypse. Now, I kind of feel like, again, if Kirkman had more time when it came to him being at Marvel and also him like working on Ultimate X-Men, he probably done a whole lot more with this character. Unfortunately, only a 4-part storyline for so many different reasons. But as we see the first chapter close, the second chapter shows us Apocalypse just going on a rampage, which honestly is kind of like, yeah, it's expected. It's Apocalypse. Like right now, we should see a character strong as Apocalypse not really being challenged by anybody at all. Now, while being on that rampage, you have Wolverine right now trying his best to get his team back in order again to regroup because 1, Angel died, but also 2, Wolverine killed off Bishop for being a supposed traitor. And so Wolverine like, listen guys, we are the X-Men. We gotta go out of our way to stop that guy right now. Like, it's up to us. Now, at first, he's kind of hard when it comes to like getting Dazzler back in the picture again, right? But once he does actually talk to her properly, she's all like, yeah, you know what? No, an Angel, he'll tell me, go kick that guy's you know what. So let's go ahead, get back together, and get up there and fight against Mr. Sinister. Sorry, Apocalypse now. I like this battle because it's the X-Men still having that hope, right? But like, it's Apocalypse kind of showing in different ways there is no hope. Like, for example, Wolverine going in first, like all the time. And then, Wolverine's kind of like, dude, I can see, I can hear, I can taste your mutant DNA. Like, you do not stand a chance against me at all. And matter of fact, you have Apocalypse go out of his way to rip off the arm of Wolverine just like that. throw him away. Psylocke tries her best to read the mind of Apocalypse. She realized she can't do that either. It's a blank slate. And for Beast and Storm and Dazzler, like, come on, y'all, and Pyro too, I guess. Like, they do not stand a chance at all when it comes to fighting against Apocalypse. Now, you also have the Morlocks arrive, right? With them being there and also the X-Men being there, it's kind of like, okay, cool. With two different teams working together, they kind of give him a small challenge at first, but really it's more him kind of like, no, y'all all try to attack me at once. But the thing is, I can take all your hits. I get all different kinds of attacks. Basically, you guys are not going to win this battle at all. It's him showing how powerful he truly is. And then he does something even crazier. Because for Apocalypse, what he can now do is control all the different mutants nearby him. So Kitty Pryde, Spider-Man, they're out there just minding their business. Out of nowhere, Kitty Pryde begins to attack Spider-Man. And he has no idea what's going on, and the same goes for her. For Fantastic Four, they want to help out, right? But flying to the city, they're then attacked by Cyclops and his X-Men team, who had, well, retired technically. And so we're seeing Apocalypse just being able to control all these different mutants across the board. Like, you're mine, you're mine, you're mine. Now for Jean Grey, she begins to kind of fight back against his control and try to see what exactly is going on. And she sees Apocalypse. She sees how powerful he truly is. S.H.I.E.L.D. is there. And for S.H.I.E.L.D., they try to fire all these different kinds of attacks. And for Apocalypse, it means nothing to him. And so for Jean Grey, she's wondering, what in the world can they possibly do against someone like him? But then things get a tad bit wilder because out of nowhere, here comes two more people walking through the portal, leaving us wondering if they're here for the X-Men or if they're there for, well, Apocalypse. And so as we get into the third chapter, what we're seeing right now, it's really more of us finding out that this is Charles Xavier, that this is Cable, who came from the future to help out with this situation. Now, for the X-Men, they had believed for the longest time that Charles Xavier was dead, right? But didn't come to find out, no, that's not the case at all. That for Cable, he took Charles into the future to train him, to get him ready. And come to find out, Cable and Bishop were working together the entire time. And for Bishop, his main goal was to stay behind and train the other X-Men just in case Charles failed. And so is Cable saying, like, we came at this point in time to help out because we knew this is where everything began when it came to Apocalypse. Now, for the X-Men having a hard time believing this, but it's Charles saying, like, no, I was in Cable's future. I saw what happened in his future. This man must be stopped by us. And the thing is, it all comes down to Charles Xavier. And we can kind of see that for Charles, he has grown a lot when it came to his powers, thanks to Cable training him. And so you have Charles right now trying his best to go toe-to-toe with Apocalypse, while you have Jean Grey right now trying her best to free the minds of the different people who are being affected by, well, Apocalypse. And so it's kind of cool to see this. Like Charles, like, no, man, I'm going to bring you down. And you have Apocalypse like, nah, man, like, come on now. Did you really think you can stand up against me? There's no way that you believed that you stood a chance with someone like me. But either way, you have Charles begin to lose the battle against Apocalypse. And this leads into my favorite moment in Ultimate X-Men, but like after it kind of did bother me. You see why? Because while you have Charles losing the battle against Apocalypse, Jean Grey is scared. She's fearing the idea that Charles might die by the hands of Apocalypse. And so she cries out to the one person who can truly help her, the one most powerful being that's inside of her. And of course, that would be the Phoenix. And just like that, it's now time for the Phoenix to fight against Apocalypse. And so now we dive into the final chapter of this storyline. The idea of us seeing Phoenix fighting against the Apocalypse. And honestly, this battle is just truly amazing because it's her just beating down on him. And so it's kind of cool to see how powerful she truly is and stuff. But also it's what she says is really important. The idea that For Apocalypse, he believes that he is the first mutant. She says no. And matter of fact, once she does defeat him, she's kind of like, here is your true form. Bam, Mr. Sinister. Kind of throwing out the idea of Apocalypse is not really that first mutant in this reality, but also the idea that once you get rid of that form right there, he's just Mr. Sinister, then he's almost nothing again. And it seems like there's no chance he'll have the ability to turn back into Apocalypse. But you then have the Phoenix go out of her way to talk to Charles Xavier, saying this is all his fault, that the actions that he took over time led up to this moment right here. It's her saying like, I'm going to give you a fresh start, a new beginning. But the thing is, you must take my new beginning, my fresh start I'm giving you, and do better than what you have been doing the entire time. Turn things around because you believed that you had the ability to bring mutants and humans together. Look what happened. This battle, this war, is all because of you, Charles. If you believe there's a chance that your dream can be achieved, then take my new beginning, my fresh start for you, and do things differently. So what she does next is set time back. Like she basically said like, all right, cool. Let's go ahead and act like nothing just happened. No Apocalypse, no Mr. Sinister. Charles didn't go in the future. Angel didn't die. Like, let's go ahead and set time back. And the thing is, for the X-Men, they remember everything. Fantastic Four? Nope. The Ultimates are S.H.I.E.L.D.? Nope. Like, only the X-Men remember everything that happened. And so it's Charles trying his best to keep the promise of Jean Grey, what he made with Jean Grey, which is, again, do better. Fresh start, new beginning. Like, here on out, do better. And for me, it's kind of like the perfect ending for Kirkman's run. The problem is that right after this, we lead into Ultimatum that kind of undoes everything that he did and Vaughn did and Bendis did. And also like even Miller kind of, like everything for me personally was good up to this point. And then you had Ultimatum. With that being said, guys, okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Ultimate Ultimate X-Men, we're going to pick up with the Absolute Power storyline. Now, guys, hear me out, because for Absolute Power, I don't really hate this storyline. It's kind of like, it felt out of place. And the reason why, because when it came to the whole idea of Robert Kirkman ending his run on Apocalypse, the idea of the Phoenix giving the X-Men a new chance in life, for Absolute Power, it kind of felt like a random storyline that was just used as a small break before we had officially dived into Ultimatum. As we all know, when it comes to Ultimatum, that had officially killed off the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Not completely, but for the most part, because most books were not really able to recover post-Ultimatum. But anyways, when it came to Absolute Power, it felt kind of weird to me, but also has some cool moments as well. And you see what I mean as we get into today's storyline. Because as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we kind of see them reworking the origin of Ultimate Colossus. And for me personally, I don't know if I like the idea of them doing this. And hear me out, because we kind of see in the opening pages that we pick up with a flashback. It's young Colossus, still in Russia, working on the farm with his parents. Now, for his parents, they had no idea that Colossus was a mutant. And so while working on the farm, he was ambushed by the mob. Now, like we saw back in Volume 1 for Ultimate X-Men, we had learned for Colossus, almost his entire life, he was working with the mob. And so now we're kind of seeing how he was recruited. They found out he was a mutant and tried to ambush him. Now, luckily for him, he was able to activate his powers as a way to protect himself. But he asked them, please do not tell my parents. And they're kind of, hey, we won't tell, but guess what? You now work for us as a way to keep your secret from your parents and also, well, other people as well. But now we switch over to the present day, and now we pick up with the X-Men right now just playing baseball, trying to relax and have a good old day. But here's the thing, because while trying to do that, they're also playing against Emma Frost students. But again, while they're playing baseball, you didn't have Iceman appear, and it does seem like he was attacked recently, to the point where he says, guys, run. Then he falls down to, well, many pieces on the ground. Like he literally shatters on the ground. And so at first, we're kind of left to believe that Iceman is possibly dead. And this leads into our first appearance of, well, Alpha Flight in this reality. Now, Alpha Flight, you have your usual characters, right? You got Snowbird, Vindicator, Sasquatch, Shaman, but you also have like, Sunfire and Jubilee, who are also part of the team as well. So now getting our first look at those two characters in this reality. Now, for Wolverine, he has heard about Alpha Flight, and we're kind of left to believe that for Alpha Flight in this reality, they still work for Department H. Now, again, Wolverine believes that they are here for him because he was working alongside with them and then, well, betrayed them. So, of course, he believes they're here to get revenge. That is not the case at all. That matter of fact, they're here for North Star because North Star was part of Alpha Flight, but he ran away and they finally were able to locate him. Now, you do have the X-Men try their best to protect him, right? But the thing is, this team, this Alpha Flight team is easily able to take on the X-Men, but also take on the different students that came from Emma Frost School as well. Now, for Colossus, he wants to protect North Star. That's his boyfriend. But for Colossus, he's not really able to protect him at all. And just like that, Alpha Flight grabs him and they disappear. But once you do have Alpha Flight leave with North Star, you didn't have the team being able to regroup with one another. Now, we also learn here that for Bobby, he is A-okay. Once you are able to put his body back together again, his body should easily heal up. So yay, Iceman is okay. But now you have our heroes realize that for Alpha Flight, they were using an enhancement drug better known as Banshee. And so this drug is a mutant growth hormone. Now, for regular humans, if they take this drug, they get powers for a certain period of time. But for other people like mutants, they may gain extra abilities. And so for the X-Men, they realized that for Alpha Flight, the reason why they were able to bring down the X-Men and bring down Emma Frost students as well is because they're using this brand new drug called Banshee. Now, for Colossus, he does seem very upset, right? And for Cyclops, he believes because, well, his boyfriend just got kidnapped. But you have Jean Grey realize there's something else that Colossus is hiding from them. And this kind of leads into the idea of what I don't like about this storyline, because what they did to Colossus in this storyline. Because this is the point where we do learn that for Colossus, the entire time while working for the mob, fighting alongside with the X-Men and everything else, that for Colossus, he has been using the Banshee drug. You see, for Colossus, in this reality, the only power he has is to be able to turn his skin into steel. That's really it. His super strength comes from the Banshee drug. So the entire time for Colossus in this entire series, apparently, he has been using the drug to help himself have super strength to fight alongside with the X-Men and all their different battles. And so once you have Colossus realize that Jean Grey is in his mind right now, Colossus does get very upset with her and begins to attack her. And of course, this leads into everyone finding out that for Colossus, he has been using the Banshee drug. And so that leads into Jean Grey telling everyone about the idea of Colossus using the Banshee drug. Now for Colossus, he's kind of like, y'all don't understand, because at first you do have the different members of the X-Men trying their best to defend him. But it's Colossus saying, no, she's right. I do use the Banshee drug, but hear me out. The reason why, because in this crazy world that we live in, villains are becoming more and more dangerous. We need that fighting edge over them. And that is where the drug comes in. But now for Jean Grey, it's kind of like, no, this school is a drug-free school. So automatically you are expelled. Now for Colossus, it's Jean Grey offering him the chance to help fight his addiction. But it's Colossus saying, am I truly addicted to this drug? Am I truly abusing this drug? Jean Grey, you had just used your power to go into my mind without my permission. That right there is you abusing your own power right there. And the thing is, you're supposed to be here and try to make us different than we were in the past, being led by Charles Xavier. Right now, you're trying to prove that you are different than Charles Xavier. But in reality, here you are right now abusing your powers. If I say no to your idea of helping me to defeat this addiction, are you going to use your powers to force me to stop using drugs? Tell me right now, because if you do, once again, you are abusing your powers. And you didn't have Colossus walk away. But while you have Colossus trying to leave to go save North Star, you didn't have Colossus be confronted by Cyclops. Now, for Scott Summers, it's him right now kind of agreeing with Colossus about the idea of using the Banshee drug. Because to Cyclops, he feels that the world is becoming more and more dangerous, but also because he is scared of Jean Grey. You see, in our last storyline, Jean Grey did become the Phoenix to fight against Apocalypse. And the thing was, she was the only one able to stop Apocalypse. And so because of that, it's Scott saying like she was so powerful in that last storyline that what if down the road again, she becomes the Phoenix and we have no choice but to fight against her and to hopefully stop her? What if we can't stop her? And again, that goes back into the idea of using the Banshee drug. And so it's Scott saying like, hey, Colossus, I'm coming with you to hopefully save North Star's life. Now for Colossus, we come to find out that this man had already recruited other people to come help him on this mission. And that would be Angel, Rogue, and also Dazzler. And so we're now getting another X-Men team, but this X-Men team is all using the Banshee drug at the moment. Now, as we dive into the second chapter, we're also been given like this flashback of the early days of Cyclops' life. And I don't remember if I ever mentioned that in this reality, when it came to Charles Xavier, his first student was Jean Grey and not Scott Summers. But anyway, for Scott Summers, he was always getting bullied at school, right? And so one day he ran home to his foster parents. They wanted to talk to him, but again, with the emotions he was going through, his power began to manifest. And when they did, of course, his optic beam was used to kill off his foster father. But as we transition back over to the present day, it's really more of us seeing, Cyclops just replaying that moment in his mind over and over again. Now, for Colossus, Rogue, Dazzler, Angel, and Cyclops, and also Nightcrawler as well, they're all right now at this meeting spot where for Colossus, he is right now about to meet up with his connection to get more Banshee drug for this next mission to hopefully save North Star's life. And so while you have Colossus doing that, he's blindfolded. And so unfortunately for the whole entire team, they have no idea, neither does Colossus, who he is supposedly meeting up with to receive this drug. Now, while you do have the team right now getting ready to leave for their next mission, you have Cyclops contact Jean Grey. So we kind of get the idea that for Cyclops, he has went undercover. Now, his main goal is to protect his friends, but also kind of figure out who in the world had created this Banshee drug. Now, back home, Jean Grey and Charles Xavier, they are testing every single student. And right now, every single student has come back negative except for one. And of course, that one will be no other than Wolverine. Now, the idea Wolverine had supposedly used the drug in the past really does tick him off because to Logan, he knows that he had never had touched that drug at all. But it's also Jean Grey kind of pointing at the idea that for Logan, he does not remember everything from his past. So there is a possibility that in the past, Wolverine had used the drug, but not by choice, really more by force. And so as Jean Grey and Wolverine decide to work together to figure out who in the world had gave him the drug in the past, or possibly what is his connection to the drug. And so for the rest of this chapter, it's really more of us seeing Cyclops and Colossus X-Men team go up against Alpha Flight. Now, for most of the members of this X-Men team, they have all taken the Banshee drug except for Cyclops. Now, earlier, it did seem like he did, but kind of find out that he had faked it because again, he is secretly working undercover alongside with Jean Grey and Charles Xavier. And so while you do have the X-Men team fighting against Alpha Flight, they still struggle because they're not really used to the idea of having these new abilities the drug had given them. And so while they're struggling for Colossus, he does completely abandon his team behind because his main goal is to go save North Star's life, his boyfriend. When it comes to Cyclops, he realized that he no longer has any choice. He has to go ahead and take the drug to give him that edge to help the rest of the team out fighting against Alpha Flight. And so this leads into us getting another flashback where it was right after you had Cyclops, supposedly now, killed off both of his foster parents thanks to his powers first manifesting. And so that was when he was confronted by Charles Xavier and Jean Grey. And with those two being there, they gave him his first pair of glasses to kind of help him control his optic beam. And so for Cyclops, while taking that drug, he remembers that moment, meaning Jean Grey for the first time. But then this leads into the idea of us finding out that with him being able to take the Banshee drug, he now has full control over his ability of his optic beam. But while you do have Cyclops being able to bring down the different members of Alpha Flight, you have Cyclops realize the entire building is now beginning to shake. And here's the reason why. Because of North Star. You see, Alpha Flight gave him a huge amount of the Banshee drug to the point where, yes, his powers are evolving, but also now he's overdosing. And so once you have Colossus being able to get to him, and once you have Cyclops being able to catch up to Colossus, it does seem like North Star had officially died in the arms of Colossus because he overdosed on the Banshee drug thanks to Alpha Flight. And so as we do pick up the third chapter, the chapter does open up kind of telling us a little information about what happened to Jean Grey between the last video and this video. So between the Apocalypse storyline and the Absolute Power storyline. And we learned that for Jean Grey, she began to travel across the universe after she was able to restore order across Earth and everything when it came to Apocalypse. And so after leaving Earth and traveling across the universe, after traveling for a while, she was then confronted by the Silver Surfer and also the Watchers. Now, the Silver Surfer tells her she needs to go back home because of her actions right now. There are wars happening across the universe in her name. You have some alien races out there committing suicide in her name. And so because of her actions, he's telling her, go back home and stop trying to be this great phoenix for the entire universe. But the thing is, Jean Grey is trying to search for something. And when he asks her, what are you looking for? She says, I'm looking for heaven. But as we do switch back over to the present day, we're now picking up with Jean Grey in the Danger Room, training against the different members of the X-Men who did not leave alongside with Colossus. And so you have these few members left kind of worried about Jean Grey. And the reason why, because ever since Cyclops, Colossus, and the others had left, she has been pushing the last few members a whole lot more than normal. And so it's Jean Grey saying that even though she has the ability to bring everyone back to life, and even though she has the ability to bring down almost anybody, you still must be ready for anything to happen down the road. Because for Iceman, it's kind of like, what is the point of training when even though we do die, you have the ability to bring us back to life? And he's right, because back in the Apocalypse storyline, Angel died. By the end of that storyline, he was brought back to life again. And also, she turned time back as well. And so it's kind of like she has so much power that what is the point even training? Now, while fighting against these X-Men in the Danger Room, she's then contacted by Nightcrawler. And you see, it's Nightcrawler saying, hey, listen, Jean Grey, I'm calling you through your mind right now because we need your help. Because now for Nightcrawler's team, they've all become addicted to the Banshee drug, to the point where they have gone out of their way to fight against bad guys, but not to stop them, but to steal their drugs from them, to use the drugs for themselves. And so while you have Nightcrawler and Jean Grey talking to one another, well, Cyclops, he can see Jean Grey on the astral plane talking to Nightcrawler because thanks to the Banshee drug, he's now like a solar battery, just being able to absorb solar energy throughout his whole entire body. And so because he does not want to lose the drug, lose his new powers, he's now able to kind of push Jean Grey out of his mind completely, saying like, hey, I'm good. We're good. We're doing so much better now thanks to the Banshee drug. But now we got to switch over to Spider-Man and also Kitty Pryde. You see, around this time in Marvel Comics, Kitty Pryde was kind of pushed out of X-Men comics over into Spider-Man comics in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And the reason why, because for Kitty Pryde, really, Brian Michael Bendis had decided that Kitty Pryde and Peter Parker should date one another. Now, when they did break up, she still was officially moved over into Spider-Man comics. But anyways, you have the two of them right now going out of their way to stop some drug dealers who are also trying to sell the Banshee drug. But then they're confronted by Wolverine. Now, for Logan, he knows that Bruce Banner is a smart guy, that Reed Richards is also a genius, but he also knows Peter Parker is a genius as well. But it's also him saying like, listen, knowing Reed and knowing Bruce, they would most likely turn me over to S.H.I.E.L.D., where there's you who won't do that at all. So I need your help right now. And the reason why you had Logan come to Peter is because he wants to figure out when in the world did he ever take the Banshee drug. Now, while you have Peter Parker doing that, we also kind of find out that Kitty Pryde had received a letter from Wolverine, and that letter meant a lot to her. But it's also kind of like telling us that Wolverine looks at Kitty Pryde in a special way. Now, for me, kind of the old like father-daughter bond possibly. But it's also Peter Parker telling us that Wolverine never did take the Banshee drug, that instead the drug was built off his DNA, which means somebody out there took his DNA and was then able to turn it into a drug to sell out there in the streets. Wolverine is the original source for the Banshee drug. But now we have to switch over to Colossus, right, and his X-Men team. Now, when we do, it's really more of us seeing Cyclops wanting to talk to Colossus about the idea of like, what's going on with them, because right now for their X-Men team, they all kind of rely too much on the drug. They should all go back home and get the help of Jean Grey and Charles Xavier to fight against this addiction. But as Colossus saying they're gonna be okay. Now, while you have the two guys talking to one another, it's Scott also mentioning the fact that originally he was a traitor. He was secretly working for Jean Grey. But then, of course, he changed his mind. But right now it's him saying, I have changed my mind once again. We should go ahead and go back home. But for Colossus, it's the idea that he's very upset that Cyclops had planned on betraying him at first. And so for Colossus, it's also kind of showing the drug is most likely doing some damage to his brain when it comes to different kinds of decisions of handling different kinds of situations. But while you have the two of them going back and forth, that is when you have Jean Grey's X-Men team arrive. Now, this, of course, leads into a battle between both sides, right? But as the battle goes on, we see something happening to Jean Grey. Now, this for me is kind of cool because it's calling back what we saw at the very beginning of this chapter, but also calling back to the earlier parts of this storyline. The idea of Jean Grey being the Phoenix, the idea of her traveling across the universe, searching for something. It's a great kind of, for me personally, a wrap up on that plot line, because what we're seeing right now is Jean Grey being confronted by her father. See, for Jean Grey, her father died right before she had joined the X-Men. But the thing was, for Jean Grey growing up, the one thing she always wanted to do was make her father proud, but also build that bond between the two of them. But the thing is, for her father, he was always worried about work. And so for Jean Grey, once he had died, her next goal was to figure out how to bring him back to life, to kind of be able to be with him once again and build that bond, to show him how great she truly became in the world of Ultimate Marvel. But the thing was, is his spirit right now saying, no, stop, because I'm the one person you cannot bring back to life. And the thing is, the harder you try, the harder you're going to fail and bring others down with you. And look around. Look at you right now. You're pushing yourself too hard right now to achieve so many great things. If you keep doing that, the only thing that happened to you is bring yourself down and everyone else around you down as well. Let me go. I understand it hurt that you lost me, but you found somebody else who could replace me, who was a father to you. And of course, talking about Charles Xavier. Now, for Jean Grey, she does pass out. And for Wolverine, well, he believes that all of this is Colossus' fault, the whole idea of Banshee. And so you have Wolverine just go at it against Colossus to the point where it does seem like, it doesn't seem like, it does happen, where you have Wolverine cut out the heart of Colossus. And so it's kind of like, man, Wolverine, there's a possibility you have gone too far and let your rage officially take over. But now this leads into the final chapter. As we get into the final chapter of today's video, it's us now officially learning like where in the world did this drug come from? Like who had created this drug? And we learned that in the past in the Savage Land, we pick up with Charles Xavier and Magneto. And we learn here that these two guys were the ones who had created the Banshee drug by using Wolverine's DNA. Now for Charles, he realized how dangerous this drug could possibly be, how addictive the drug could possibly be. And so he had decided to get rid of the drug, but to also make sure Wolverine would never remember being used as a lab rat to create this drug. And so the question is now, if Charles did get rid of the drug many years ago, then who pick up where Charles had left off at? But as we get back over to the present day, we're now seeing Colossus still being able to fight against Wolverine, to fight against the other members of the X-Men without his heart being inside his body anymore. And so as the fight goes on, it's also us seeing Colossus be more savage-like, to the point where you have the dude go out of his way to rip Wolverine in half. Now for Nightcrawler, he does go out of his way to wake up Jean Grey. And with her waking up, she kind of realized there's only one person who can truly help out Colossus, and that would be John Paul. We learn here that John Paul did not die in the earlier chapter. Instead, John Paul has survived, but now he's paralyzed from the waist down. With John Paul being there, it's kind of like Colossus, look at yourself. Like you are now a completely different man. Is that the man John Paul would be in love with? And so you have Colossus just calm down and finally realize that this has gone too far. Now for Cyclops, he does not leave with the rest of the X-Men. Instead, he goes somewhere else. But you do have Jean Grey go ahead and take the two back to the school of Charles Xavier. Now, with her doing that, it's also her being able to put the heart back into Colossus' body. But we're also kind of playing with the idea of the possibility of like Colossus not being able to turn back into his regular self again. And the reason why, because, well, his heart was cut out of his body and then put back into his body. Now, it's also Wolverine and Colossus being able to apologize to one another. Now, while doing that, it's Colossus saying, listen, I still have a small sample of the Banshee drug. What if you are able to figure out where it came from by picking on some kind of scent from it? And so you have Wolverine take a small sniff of the drug, the Banshee drug that Colossus has. Now we have to switch over to Cyclops, right? And for Cyclops, the idea of him being able to absorb solar energy thanks to the Banshee drug, the dude can right now just sit on the moon and like look at the Earth from outer space. Now he is confronted by Jean Grey, and it's Jean Grey right now trying to show Cyclops like how far he has fallen. Like he does not need the drug of this great man, this great leader. Like for the X-Men, they would follow him no matter what. He already proved to be a great leader, a great X-Men, a great person, a great man to her. And so it's her right now trying to show him like the Banshee drug is damaging your mind, but also the fact like you're at a point where you rather die than rather get better. And so while you have Jean Grey being able to try to heal the mind of Cyclops, you have Wolverine go confront Charles Xavier, now knowing that it was Charles who had created the drug in the first place. But here's the thing, Charles said, yeah, I did create the drug a long time ago, but I shut everything down, which means someone else out there had most likely picked up where he left off at. And so for Wolverine and Charles, they find out it was Moira McTaggart. Now, Wolverine does attack her, right? But while attacking her, he realized that she has a whole entire room full of the drug. Like her main goal is to, yes, build up an army of people, of mutants who can rely on the drug. but also make the world a better place for mutants across the world. Now, you do have Wolverine go out of his way to blow up the entire lab to make sure the Banshee drug ends there. But as the book begins to close down, the last page kind of gives us a beginning process of us saying goodbye to this X-Men team because, well, after this ultimatum. And matter of fact, at the very end of the last page, we see Quicksilver confronting Moira Taggart. And apparently for Quicksilver, he tells her like Magneto has big plans for her, but also how to deal with the human race. Okay, so like we have like one more video to do when it comes to our coverage over Ultimate X-Men before we have to dive into the idea of Ultimatum. And the thing is, guys, like I'm still debating on doing Ultimatum because for me personally, I have read that storyline so many times growing up and also for the channel, even after the channel, that I'm kind of tired of Ultimatum, right? Now, hear me out, because for me personally, Ultimatum did ruin the Ultimate Marvel Universe in so many different kinds of ways, right? But at the same time, kind of like it's very important when it comes to our coverage over Ultimate X-Men. I don't know yet. Like, I know for sure I'm gonna do the tie-ins, but the tie-ins I have to do. But like the main storyline, I don't know. It's still up in the air. But anyways, getting into the idea of today's video, we're going to cover a crossover between Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Fantastic Four that took place in two different annuals. And it's kind of a cool storyline for me. Unfortunately, this storyline goes almost nowhere after it's wrapped up and everything because honestly, we had Ultimatum and then plans massively changed when it came to the idea of the Ultimate Marvel Universe going to phase 2 post-Ultimatum. But getting into the first chapter, we're going to cover Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Fantastic Four Annual Number 1. So as we get into the opening pages of this storyline, we're being introduced to a brand new X-Men team. But the thing is, this brand new X-Men team is from 20 years in the future. So we're kind of left to wonder what in the world happened in 20 years in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And we're kind of told by these opening pages a lot of different things had happened in that 20-year time jump because we're being introduced to a brand new team. We got Wolverine, Kitty Pryde, Rogue, a young boy named Phoenix, and also Captain America. So it's kind of like, wait a second, how in the world do we get a young boy named Phoenix, but also why is supposedly Steve Rogers now part of the X-Men for? Like, what in the world is going on here, right? But right now we're seeing this brand new X-Men team go out of their way to hijack a train. Now, they made sure that all the innocent people get off the train first. But once they do take over the train completely, they make sure the train does crash into this building. And this leads us over to the present day. And so when we do switch over to the present day, we're now picking up with the Ultimate Fantastic Four team. You know, Reed Richards, Susan Storm, and you have the two of them right now kind of getting ready for a good old date night, right? But then out of nowhere, his time machine turns on by itself, and then out of nowhere, it's our two young heroes being, well, introduced to the brand new X-Men team from the future. And so for Reed, he's kind of like, hey, nice to see you guys. How can we help you? And they're like, yeah, you can help us, all right, by dying. We came here to kill you. And of course, this leads into a battle. Now, as the battle goes on, you do have something kind of pop off here. And it's all because of Susan Storm. Let me explain. Because you have her wondering, like, why in the world are you guys even trying to attack us for? We are just a family. Now, when she does say the word family, that right there does tick off the young boy on the future X-Men team known as Phoenix. He's kind of like, family? What in the world do you know about family? And so with them kind of freaking out, it does kind of give the X-Men team an edge in winning this battle. They grab Reed and they disappear. So just like that, our heroes just lost their leader, but also kind of wondering why in the world would this future X-Men team come out of their way to kill off Reed, but also why in the world a young boy freaked out for when I said the word family. But now we switch over to the present day X-Men team. Now, this storyline does pick up where our last video left off at. The idea that you had a few members of the X-Men get hooked on a brand new drug known as Banshee. Now, the Banshee drug did give these heroes, extra abilities, but they became all addicted to the drug. But when it comes to Wolverine, he also learned that that drug, the Banshee drug, was created by his DNA. And so he's really upset about the idea of Rogue having using that drug to give herself extra abilities. And so he has been trying to keep his distance from her. Now, it's also him saying, like, I'm very upset because you used a drug that was made out of me. You know how it feels to be used by other people. Weapon X, Magneto, you especially, Weapon X. Now, while you do have the two kind of going back and forth, you didn't have Jean Grey call them back saying, hey guys, we got a problem. Please come inside because we have some guests who need our help. And of course, that would be the Fantastic Four. Now, once you do have the rest of the X-Men who are, available right now, thanks to recent storylines, it's Jean Grey kind of sharing the story that Susan and her team had told Jean Grey about. Like, hey, listen, a future version of you guys came out of nowhere, kidnapped Reed, and took him away. We have no idea where in the world they could possibly be at. Now, for Jean Grey, two things. First, he's kind of like, yeah, we should go ahead and help out because if there is a future version of us out there wearing our outfit, wearing our symbol, then we are responsible for kind of handling that problem, right? But also, let's not forget, for Jean Grey, she's right now, aka the Phoenix. So she's actually able to locate almost anybody across the world. Now, her main goal at first was to find two different Wolverines. She can only find one, the one right next to her, but she does find two rogues. So it's kind of like, wait, how in the world was she able to find two rogues but not two Wolverines? But now we got to switch back over to the other X-Men team. Now, when we do, it's really more of us seeing them trying to find a way to kill off Reed Richards from the present day. We also learn that this man, Reed, could be responsible for what had happened in their dark future. Now, we also learn, like, who in the world is this young boy who has a code name Phoenix? We learn here that his name is Franklin Richards. And Reed was the one to kind of find out because Reed, he has been looking at other timelines across the multiverse. He already knows in almost every single timeline, him and Susan, they get together and they have a son together. And that son is always named Franklin. So for Reed, he already knew that Franklin is his son from the future. But on top of that, it's kind of like, wait, how in the world did he receive the powers of the Phoenix? But then out of nowhere, he's then stabbed from behind by Wolverine. And we learn here that when it came to Wolverine, the future one, he never was the real Wolverine. That instead, it was a Sentinel that was designed to look and act like Wolverine. And matter of fact, almost all different kinds of Sentinels in the future are designed to act and look just like Wolverine. And matter of fact, we see a whole pack of them had also came back in time to kill off our future X-Men team. Now, when the present day team do arrive, unfortunately, they're a tad bit too late because one, they found a dead body of Rogue. Two, when it came to Wolverine from the future, that was a fake Wolverine, a Sentinel. Now, we also learn here that for good old Captain America, that was not Steve Rogers. That was actually Scott Summers, who had took up the mantle because in his future, Steve Rogers was depowered. Now, with all that being said, Scott also dies right there in the arms of Jean Grey. So just like that, most of the future X-Men are dead except for two people, Kitty Pryde and Franklin, aka the Phoenix. Now, when it comes to fake Wolverine, he said, listen, I am not the traitor. Over time, I had gained feelings for Rogue. And so with those feelings, I hated the idea of being the one to betray you guys down the road. But somebody else on the team is a traitor. Now for Susan, present day Susan, she wants to know, like, where in the world is Reed? And you have the fake Wolverine say, well, you see, they grabbed Reed and took Reed back into our future. Now, it's also like Franklin and Kitty say, listen, you guys don't understand what Reed did in the future that truly did affect everyone, like all the mutants across the board possibly. And so then we jump into the future now. And when we do, we see Iceman, future Iceman, being attacked by, well, some more Wolverine Sentinels. But that part right there is not really important because we then switch over to Reed, who's now stuck in the future. Because you have Reed being able to escape from his cell, except while doing that, you have Reed walking around. He does run into Firestar. Now, at first, he thought it was Johnny, but it's not Johnny, it's Firestar. And we kind of learn here that in the future, the Fantastic Four went through some changes. You still got Susan, you still got Ben Grimm, but you have Namor and Firestar as well. And then this leads into the second chapter of this storyline. And so as we get into the second chapter, and by the way, the second chapter is really more just Fantastic Four X, but the titles just switch names backwards. But anyways, we now pick up with a team of characters who are trying to break into the SHIELD helicarrier because they need the PIM particles to get Reed Richards' time machine working again. So we pick up with Firestar, future Kitty Pryde, present day Ben Grimm, and present day Wolverine being able to break into the helicarrier, find Hank Pym, and get their hands on the PIM particles. Now, once you do have all our different heroes in the present day being able to regroup, get the time machine working again, it's kind of like, cool, we can all now go into the future. The problem is that the present day heroes do not trust the future heroes at all because, again, they came from the future to kill off Reed Richards. They're like, hey, y'all came from our future to kill off Reed. So why in the world should we trust you guys when it comes to, I don't know, going back into the future again because you might still kill off Reed? And they're kind of like, no. Our main goal right now should bring down the leader, the absolute ruler in our future, and that would be Susan Storm. And so as we do switch back over to the present day, it's us now picking up with Reed Richards, kind of confused because one, he sees Susan right now in front of him, right? He's kind of like, dang, she looks amazing. Like, okay, cool. But it's also him seeing Ben Grimm looking normal again. And so for Reed, it's kind of like, why in the world is Ben normal again? Now it's Ben saying like, it was you who turned me back to my regular form. Like it took you a long time, but you were able to find a way to turn me back to normal again. Now it's also Reed wondering why in the world was the future X-Men team from this time who came back in time to kill him off for? But it's Susan saying because of what you had created, but also because of me. They want me dead. But now you're here, you can now help me finish the machine that you have built for me, the Promise. Now, for the past heroes, they did arrive in the future, right? But decided to split up into two different teams. We have one team right now in the end zone to free the prisoners that were captured by Susan Storm, and the other team went into the Baxter building to hopefully find Reed and free him. Now, for the first team, they're like, cool, you know what? We see this pyramid, it's the prison, let's go ahead, attack it, and hopefully free the people who are still trapped inside. But it's also them kind of wondering how to officially shut down the Sentinels as well. And so why everyone talking to one another? Well, then out of nowhere, you have our heroes be confronted by Nihil. Now for Nihil in the present day was a ruler of the end zone. So right now with them being in the end zone all over again, it's kind of like, oh, he's still alive. And right now he is leading an army towards us right now. Get ready for a big battle. Now for team number two, they're still walking around the Baxter building. As a matter of fact, they run into the future versions of themselves. So like Firestar, Ben Grimm, Namor is Namor, right? Now for present day Ben Grimm and present day Firestar, they're kind of like, wait a second. So in the future, Firestar replaces Johnny Storm, who supposedly had died. Okay, cool. But there I am right now in some kind of armor suit. I'm now Iron Thing. But either way, they're right now trying to figure out what is their game plan when it comes to possibly dealing with their future selves. But getting back over to present day Reed, who's right now with future Susan, we see her show off this machine that future Reed has supposedly created to help turn Ben Grimm back to normal again. But after doing that, the future Reed had disappeared. And so right now it's future Susan saying, I'm hoping that you have the ability to fix this machine for me. But as we do switch back over to the other team in the end zone, we learn that the future Reed did not disappear, that he'd been in hiding the entire time, but in the end zone and pretending to be, well, nihil. And so it's him right now revealing to the present day heroes, like, hey, I'm still alive, but now with me being here, I can fully explain what's going on when it comes to this future that you guys are currently in right now at this moment. Now, for team number 2, this is funny right here, because you have Firestar and also Ben and Graham go out of their way to confront their future selves, right? Except when they do that, they kind of find out that in the future, those two actually get together and become a couple. It's kind of like, whoa. That is pretty wild, right? Now, for the rest of Team 2, which is Kitty Pryde, Iceman, and Johnny Storm, they see the future version of Iceman being taken away by Namor into this room. Now, in a short period of time that present-day Reed was here in the future, he was able to fix a machine that future Reed had created. And so you have them use a device on the future Iceman, and it turns him back to normal. Now, our present-day heroes for Team 2, they do barge in and fight against Namor, but you do have future Susan grab present-day Reed to go somewhere else. But as we do switch back over to team number 1, the end zone, it's Reed saying, like, our future Reed, how he lost his powers. In this reality or timeline, when he gave Ben the ability to look normal again, it also hit him as well while using that machine. Now, for Reed, it's also him introducing Franklin over to Susan, like, hey, in the future, your Reed and you have a child, a young boy, and that would be Franklin Richards. Now, with all that being said, while everyone is talking, out of nowhere, an army of Wolverine Sentinels, begin to attack our heroes. Now, in the middle of that battle, we watch Franklin Richards take away the power of the Phoenix from Jean Grey. And we kind of find out that he is the actual traitor. But on top of that is him now telling us that he's working with his mother, the future Susan Storm. Now, for past Wolverine and past Rogue, they were able to sneak into the actual building, right? And with them doing that, we kind of find out the future version of Wolverine was still alive, but he was hooked under the device and being used as a way to create those Wolverine Sentinels. And so he begs the past Wolverine, present day Wolverine, to go ahead and kill him off. And so we do see present day Wolverine do that for him. But once doing that, that also shuts down all the other Wolverine Sentinels in the area as well. And so now we're kind of getting into the ending of the storyline where we do learn that Johnny Storm in the future had died because of the ultimatum wave, possibly. But of course, with his death, it truly did affect the idea of how Susan thinks of mutants, because apparently a mutant was responsible for the ultimatum wave that had killed off her Johnny. And so that is why she began the process of locking up mutants and heroes left and right. But you then have future Reed go ahead and use his device once again to take away the powers of Franklin and also Susan. And so with him doing that, the day is kind of saved, because again, in this future, Susan Storm was the absolute leader of this future, but now she has been depowered and all the different prisoners are now free. Everyone go back home now like it's all over. And so really you have the book kind of end on the note leaving us wondering, like, what is the supposed future for the Ultimate Marvel universe? Like, we do see Ben Grimm kind of wondering, like, will that future actually happen where it's him and Firestar getting together? But then he sees Firestar go on a date with Johnny Storm. And then you also have Wolverine and Rogue kind of work things out with one another. And also, I forgot to talk about this, but also apparently in the future, Wolverine and Rogue, they end up together somehow. But apparently right now, they're kind of like, hey, we're good. We'll see how things go. And so you have the book kind of end on the note where it's Reed and Susan, the present day Reed and Susan, kind of being happy to be together once again. But it's also Reed showing us that he did plan on proposing to Susan very soon down the road. And of course, that plot line right there does pick up in the whole idea of ultimatum. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. Okay, y'all. So I guess it's time for us to officially dive back into ultimatum. But here's the thing, because we're not diving into the actual main storyline for right now. I'm gonna go ahead and recover the tie-ins for Ultimate X-Men when it came to the idea of ultimatum, because the tie-ins for me was not really that bad, but at the same time kind of confusing as well when they line up in the timeline for the whole entire event of Ultimatum. But at the same time, for me personally, it's still a cool tie-in, but unfortunately I hate it's the ending for the Ultimate X-Men line. But getting into the opening pages of this storyline, we pick up with William Stryker. Now for William, it's really more the idea of us seeing him right now just at home with his wife and kid. As a matter of fact, it does seem like at first that he's a good guy, right? At home, wife and kid, got an apartment, got a job, he's a preacher. He's right now just enjoying life. But then we kind of find out that this guy is a huge bird watcher. And so his main goal is to go outside to look at a bird. Now, he does go to the rooftop of his apartment building. Now, this does take place moments before the idea of the ultimatum wave. The reason why I'm saying that, because while he's out there bird watching, he sees the wave coming towards him. The idea of Magneto flooding New York. And so his main goal is to get back to his family. The problem is that once he does get back inside, the wave does hit his building. And when he does get back to his family, they have been killed off. They drowned. But now we got to switch over to Charles Xavier School. Now, when we do, it's us picking up with Rogue and also Firestar and I want to say Psylocke watching the news. Now, while doing that, it's them finding out what happened in the city, that Magneto had flooded the city. Now, for Rogue, she already knew a few things. One, Dazzler, Angel, Beast, and also Nightcrawler, they were downtown. So the question is right now, did they survive? We already know they did not, but hey, for Rogue right now, she has no idea. Now, when Rogue turns around, she sees Jean Grey, Wolverine, and Cyclops leaving. And it's Jean Grey telling Rogue hey, we know who did this. It was Magneto. Now, for Rogue, she wants to go with them, but Jean Grey says no, because they can't trust her. Because for Rogue, over time in Ultimate X-Men, she had always switched sides. First, Weapon X. Then the X-Men, then the Brotherhood, then back to the X-Men. Then she left the X-Men, came back to the X-Men, and then the whole Banshee drug thing. And so it's Jean Grey saying right now, we can't trust you. But it's also Jean Grey trying to give her a better picture of what's happening right now, because her telling Rogue, Beast is dead. Angel's dead, Dazzler is dead, Nightcrawler is also dead, because their final moments had touched the mind of Jean Grey. And so it's Jean right now saying, one, we can't trust you, and two, only the original X-Men team is going now. So Cyclops, Wolverine, and also Jean Grey. Now, Angel's not dead yet. He died later on in the whole event of Ultimatum, but still, Dazzler, gone. Beast, gone. Nightcrawler also gone. And so for Rogue, she's having a hard time hearing things from Jean Grey, especially the idea of her not being trusted. Now, she is confronted by Toad, who also had joined the school recently, but it's Toad saying they look at you as they look at me, someone they cannot trust. They look at you because of Weapon X. They look at you because of the Brotherhood. They look at you as a monster. And so for Rogue, she hates the idea that everyone around her is looking at her as some kind of monster. And so you have Rogue touch Toad to gain his powers. And she says, I'm going to show them and everyone else what kind of monster I truly am. Now, hours after the idea of the ultimatum wave, we do see that you have some tents being set up in the city for people who have survived the actual wave. But it's also us picking back up with William Stryker. Now, for William, it's him trying to be that great preacher to keep everyone's spirit up, right? But at the same time, his thoughts are getting to him, the evil thoughts, where he looks at mutants as abominations. And now it's him blaming God for the creation creation of mutants because he now lost his wife. He now lost his child. But at the same time, other people have lost their family members as well. So it's him kind of wondering, why in the world would God create mutants for? They're so dangerous. Now, while you have him kind of in his own mind right now, he's then confronted by these other people who also hate mutants. And it's them saying like, we knew your father. And that man, we knew what kind of man he was. The question is right now, what kind of man are you? Because right now you are hurting because you had lost your wife. You had lost your son. So what are you going to do about it? Because these guys are also telling William like, listen, we had found out that thanks to the flood, you had different items kind of float into the city. Like for example, crates that came from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s headquarters, crates that are full of different kind of equipment, crates that have like different parts that belong to Sentinels. But now we got to switch over to Rogue. Really, at first, we switch over to Alpha Flight because their base right now is being attacked. Now, the different like soldiers who are set there are kind of freaking out and they're trying to escape. But the different members of Alpha Flight, they're also getting beat down by one person, and that would be Rogue. Now, Rogue does appear. This does kind of pick up where our last video left off at when it came to absolute power. The idea that you had different members of the X-Men take a drug, a Banshee drug that gave them powers. Now, in that storyline, we were also introduced to Alpha Flight, but it's also Rogue telling us that she knows the true identity of Vindicator in this reality. And of course, it would be Colonel Wraith. Now, for Colonel Wraith, he was in charge of Weapon X. He's the reason why we had Rogue, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Juggernaut, how they all were part of Weapon X thanks to this guy right here. But after you had the X-Men defeat him, apparently the Canadian government gave him the Banshee drug to give him powers, to then set up a whole new organization, Alpha Flight. Now, when it comes to Rogue, she also knows that for Wraith, this man got plans on how to bring down different people, like, for example, the idea of Magneto. And so is Rogue saying that you are going to help me find a way to kill off Magneto because you do know a way on how to stop him. Now, at first, he's kind of like, why in the world would I help you? But it's her saying like, if you don't, I'ma kill you. So then he agrees. But it's also him saying like, first, right now, we need to kind of get the old band back together again to pull this off. So we see Rogue and also Vindicator head over to this bar. And just like that, they find Sabretooth and also Juggernaut, who both were part of, well, Weapon X. And so you have her being able to bring both of them down, but kind of be like, you two are now going to help me out with my new missions. Just like that, we're seeing the whole like Weapon X team coming back together. But getting into the closing parts of this chapter alone, we switch back over to School of Charles Xavier. Now, when we do, is us also picking up with Psylocke, Firestar, and also Syndicate. Now, for Syndicate, we have to remember he's conjoined twins. And so for these two characters, they want to go outside. And so when they walk outside, one of the twins' heads get blown off. And the reason why, because for William Stryker, him and his team are now going to attack the School of Charles Xavier. And so as we get into the second chapter, what we're seeing now is really more of William Stryker, kind of like, okay, you know what? That's one mutant dead right there. We killed off this mutant. There goes Syndicate. And so now it's William Stryker wanting to lead this army of guys with all these different kinds of equipment to basically burn down the entire School of Charles Xavier. But now we switch over to Rogue. Now for Rogue, her main goal is to torture Sabretooth, while you have Vindicator torture, well, the Juggernaut, to hopefully get information out of them about what Magneto is trying to plan. Now, when it comes to Sabretooth, he's kind of like Wolverine in a way, where it's not that easy to read his mind, to get into his mind. And so for Rogue, while she's trying her best to get into his mind, unfortunately, she can't. The only thing she's digging up right now is all those bad times from his life. Now, when I say bad times from his life, it's really more the bad things he did to other people in his life. But while you do have the two characters torturing Sabretooth, torturing Juggernaut, that is when you have Psylocke contact Rogue, really anybody who can hear her call for help. Because it's her right now saying like, if anyone is out there can help us, please help us. Because right now the school is being attacked. It's her and most likely Firestar and Toad, the only ones who are really able to fight against this army of men and women who have these equipment used to hunt down and kill mutants. And so for Rogue and also for, Vindicator, kind of like, whoa, that message. What do we do here? And is Rogue saying like, we should go and help? Now, Vindicator's kind of like, no, girl, like our main goal right now is to bring down Magneto. Like, look at us. We have the opportunity here to stop this man once and for all. But is Rogue saying like, we should do the right thing? We should go help them out right now because those are innocent children who are being killed off right now by people who are upset because of Magneto. And so when we do switch back over to the school, it's Toad and Firestar trying their best to fight against these army of men and women who have these weapons to use against them. And so while trying their best, they get easily defeated. Now, luckily for Firestar, luckily for Toad, you have some help arrive, in which is right now going to be Rogue, Sabretooth, the Juggernaut, and also Vindicator as well. They arrive just in time to help out with this situation. And this, of course, leads into a big battle. So you do have a few things happen in this battle. Like, for example, the idea of Sabretooth. As the battle goes on, at first, Homeboy is losing that battle, but he wants to get right back up and keep fighting. But the thing is, he's called away by Magneto. So just like that, he's gone. And then when it comes to Vindicator, he's fighting against William Stryker. He says, dude, I knew your father. Your father was a racist. Your father was a bad man. I thought you were different. I guess I was wrong. And then you have Stryker kill off Wraith just like that. Now, when it comes to Juggernaut, he's also taken off the board as well because they hit him with some kind of poison. And so he dies in the arm of Rogue. Now, before he does die, he does give her his powers for the use for the ending of this storyline, or this chapter at least, because with all of them now being dead or gone around her, it's now up to Rogue. And so what we see now is Rogue just going on a rampage. Is Rogue right now trying her best to defeat every single person who stands in her way right now with the powers of Juggernaut. But the problem is that she's killing folks left and right. And so for Stryker, he's kind of like, you had just proved my point, that you are a killer, that mutants are evil. Look around you and look at the piles of dead bodies that you had just made because of your anger. And so it's him trying to say like, yeah, you are a bad person. Yeah, you're a mutant and you all deserve to die. And the final issue of Ultimate X-Men is really more about the idea of one particular character, and that would be Jamie Madrox. Now, for Jamie, he has the ability to make clones of himself. And so we see him right now, we see an army of him heading over to the Houses of Parliament. And here's the thing, because it's a meeting right now at all these different countries in Europe. And their main goal right now is to send a message over to, Magneto. But the thing is that when you have Jamie walk in the room, every single clone of his has some kind of bomb strapped to their bodies. And so the whole entire building blows up. And guys, the thing is, at that meeting, you had Captain Britain, Captain France, Captain Spain, and it does seem like they all have been killed off in that one explosion. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, this is the issue where they find out that Charles Xavier is dead, because you do have the first class X-Men come home. When they come home, all they see is Rogue right now holding onto the body of Charles Xavier. And they're kind of like, Rogue, what happened? And so is Rogue saying like, we were attacked. I was distracted. And so while being distracted, Magneto snuck in and snapped the neck of Charles Xavier. And so it's now them saying like, we have out there and kill off Magneto. He must die for this. But at the same time, they also realize that for Magneto, he's now going to attack everyone, humans and mutants. And it all starts with Jamie Madrox. And so that leads into, the X-Men going to different locations. They got to find a way to stop him, but also prevent him from attacking other people as well. And so when it comes to Cyclops and Iceman, I want to say Rogue as well, they head over to Emma Frost School. And when they arrive there, they come to find out that almost all the different students at Emma Frost School have been attacked and most likely killed off. Now, for Scott Summers, question he has right now, where is his brother Alex Summers, who was one of Emma Frost's students there? And the thing is, he does not find Alex. Instead, he finds Madrox, who's right now trying to kill him, Iceman, and also Rogue as well. Now, for Storm and also Jean Grey, they go into the tunnels of the Morlocks. Now, with them doing that, it's the two of them right now trying to protect the Morlocks from Jamie. And Jean Grey uses her powers right now to control the minds of every single clone of Jamie. Now, while doing that, she kind of realized that Jamie's mind is so broken. Like, each clone of his only has a small portion of Jamie's mind, a very small portion. Now, for Jean Grey, she does let one slip on accident. So for Storm, she has no choice but to go ahead and kill off that one, because almost every single Jamie here is also holding on to some kind of bomb that could go off and kill everyone in the tunnels of the Morlock. Now, for Wolverine, he went over to the Savage Land. Now, this leads into the idea of us finally learning like the actual origin of Jamie Madrox. What we do learn by Wolverine going to Savage Land, he does meet up with Kazar and Shauna. And we kind of learn that for Jamie, he's currently being held inside a house by one particular mutant, better known as Lorelei. And I really hope I pronounce her name correctly. Now, she has the ability to control the minds of men. And so we kind of find out that for Jamie, he has been there since 1994. He still believes that he's like 13, 14 years old. But in reality, his mind has been under control ever since then. So he has no idea what he has been doing across the world for Magneto this entire time. And the only way to stop him is to kill him. Wolverine had no choice because the kid still believed that the person downstairs was his mom. And he couldn't believe everything that Wolverine was telling him in the first place. So the book does end on the note where we see Wolverine say that he killed off Jamie and his next target is going to be Magneto. And okay, so I kind of thought I would never cover this storyline ever again. But here we are now with me basically sitting back down and covering Ultimatum once again. Guys, like I said earlier, I had no plans in my mind to like get back down into the idea of recovering the storyline. But the thing is that we're going to do an omnibus video for Ultimate X-Men. We already did the first 2 volumes, right? And with volume 3 now being out there for you guys to collect for yourselves, well, in volume 3, Ultimatum is part of that collection, including the issue that comes after Ultimatum as well for the X-Men. And so I say, you know what? Let's go ahead and cover Ultimatum. We already covered like the whole entire run of Ultimate X-Men and Wolverine versus Hulk and, Ultimate War, everything else, right? So why not go ahead and cover Ultimatum? Now, you see, for Ultimatum, it gets a lot of hate. And the reason why, because it was a massive change to the Ultimate Marvel universe. And let me explain, because when it came to Ultimate Marvel, in the early 2000s, when it came to Marvel Comics, period, technically, in the late 1990s, they were trying to fix themselves because by late 1990s, Marvel was struggling. And so in the early 2000s, you had Marvel bring in all these new writers, new ideas for comics, and that included Ultimate Marvel. And for Ultimate Marvel, it just kicked off right at the very beginning with Ultimate Spider-Man. Then later on, you got X-Men. Later on, you had Ultimates. Later on, you had Fantastic Four. And it just kept growing and growing. For a good while there, Ultimate Marvel was bringing fans back into comics and bringing in new fans into comics, right? But then the late 2000s, going into the 2010s, the Ultimate Marvel universe kind of grew a tad bit stale. And honestly, I will agree with that. But you did have Marvel say, well, let's try to get things back on track with Ultimatum, this massive event, not really massive, but event for the Ultimate Marvel universe, but also having tie-ins as well, kind of support this event and kind of show we want to get things back on track. And that was not the case really, because once this event had ended, Ultimate Marvel was lost. And you'll see what I mean as we go through today's storyline. Because now we're getting into the opening pages for Ultimatum #1, right? And when we do, it's the different characters like the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Spider-Man, like all these different characters right now who were involved in the Ultimate Marvel universe, who grew in this reality alongside with us technically. Because again, for me, I grew up with Ultimate Spider-Man. But anyways, when it came to these characters, it does seem like another day in their lives in this universe. You got Reed wanting to propose to Susan Storm. You got the X-Men right now downtown having a good day off. You have Tony Stark drinking as usual. You got Peter Parker right now with his friends. And everything does seem great, right? But then just like that, in an instant, everything falls apart for this universe. Because out of nowhere, you have this massive flood just hit the entire city of New York. And so once that happened, you're like, oh my God, like this is huge. Like, what's going to happen to our heroes? And right off the bat, you have all these other heroes appear. Giant Man / Ant-Man / Yellow Jacket. You got the Hulk appear. Iron Man grabs Steve Rogers. We're seeing the possibility of Johnny being dead right now alongside with his father. We're seeing all these different things happening. It's kind of like, oh my God. This is a massive hit to the Ultimate Marvel universe. And the thing is, we're not even done yet. Like with all the ideas of deaths happening left and right in these opening pages, because you have the tie-ins kind of tell us and show us other heroes who had died in this event as well. Like, for example, I think Daredevil died in the Spider-Man tie-ins, things like that. So it's kind of showing like, this event was meant to change everything in the Ultimate Marvel universe. But we do switch over to Reed and Susan. And for me, it's one of those like brief examples of this reality version of Susan being really powerful by using her powers to push the wave out of the city to hope say some lives are out there right now who are being affected by this massive flood that came out of nowhere. Now, of course, doing that, she passes out and Reed is unable to wake her back up. Now, for Ben Grimm, he's kind of like, yo, Reed, what's going on right now? Like, the city got hit with water. It was a huge sea animal in our building. Like, what in the world is happening? And for Reed, he gives her over to Ben and says, I gotta go, because he thinks he knows who is responsible for this entire event. And the thing is, he's clearly wrong, but he still believes he's right. Because to him, he believes that it had to be Namor. Now, the thing is, he's wrong, but it's him saying like, no, it makes a lot of sense. Now, Namor first appeared like an Ultimate Fantastic Four. Ooh, I forgot what issue number, but he came in out of nowhere as a love interest for Susan Storm, right, in the Ultimate Marvel universe. And that part right there, it's really important because it's him saying like, why in the world would I go out of my way to flood an entire city full of people? Yes, I do hate you surface people, but like, that would also hit Susan. That could also kill her. So why in the world would I put her in harm's way? It's like, yeah, he's actually right. And so you have Reed knock out Namor. We're kind of wondering now again, who in the world is responsible for this? You have the book automatically tell you like, if you thought it was Doctor Doom, you're wrong. Because for Doctor Doom, he's also being affected by this over in Latveria. This whole ecological event, this disaster is happening all over the world. And so in Latveria, it's snow and ice. People are literally frozen in place. And so for Doctor Doom, you have to wonder, who in the world did this? Like, who in the world is affecting the whole entire world right now? And we get our answer by Charles Xavier. Because you have Charles already knowing like what happened. Like he felt the death of his different members of the X-Men, but also the death of different people who were affected by this event. He already knows who did this, because this person told him many years ago as a doomsday plan, right? And so for Charles, he contacts the X-Men, he contacts Fantastic Four, he contacts Spider-Man, he contacts the Ultimates. He's like, hey y'all, listen, we need all hands on deck right now because things have truly popped off. And I know who is responsible for this. It's no other than Magneto. Now, if you saw my Ultimates 3 video, this kind of makes a lot of sense because for Ultimates 3, we saw the death of the Scarlet Witch at the very beginning of that storyline. We're kind of left to wonder, like, who killed off the Scarlet Witch? It was Vision, right? No, it was Ultron, the robot created by Hank Pym, basically, yeah, the usual stuff. But anyways, when it came to Scarlet Witch, she died. But at the end of that storyline, so did Quicksilver. And so for Magneto's kind of like, no, they need to pay the ultimate price for what they have done because he now lost both of his children. Now, for Spider-Man, as we get into the second chapter, I do want to point out that he's a character you're not going to see in the final battle against Magneto. Like, to the X-Men, the Ultimates, but you're not going to see Peter Parker there. And the reason why, because for Brian Michael Bendis, he wanted Peter kind of like out there doing the, I want to say, not superhero thing, but like the street hero thing. You know, there are people right now who are affected by this event and they need a hero in their corner to help them get out of this event. So like people who are right now stuck under cars or people right now stuck in buildings and everything. Like it's Peter going out his way to help out the little people. And then he gets some help from the Hulk as well. And that leads into a whole storyline and his tie-ins. But you didn't have Iron Man head over to S.H.I.E.L.D. And here's the reason why. Because Steve Rogers, who was okay at first, it seemed like in the first chapter, is no longer okay. It does seem like he does need some medical attention. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, Carol Danvers was in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. because, well, Nick Fury was in a different reality. And matter of fact, I'll explain why later on, because he does come back in this storyline kind of help out when it comes to bringing down Magneto. But for Carol Danvers, once she sees Iron Man and realizes that Steve right now needs some attention, she said, hey y'all, I need a medical team right now. Get this man some help. And bam, they're there and trying their best to save his life. But then Iron Man is called away. But now we got to switch over to Hank. This right here is really important because when it comes to Hank Pym, right? When it comes to Hank, he does not care at all about anybody except for the Wasp. He's all like, where is the girl I love? I gotta find her right now to make sure she's alive. I don't care even if I have a chance to save your life. If you ain't the Wasp, I ain't gonna save your life. Now you do have Hawkeye wanting to help out. But here's the thing, because in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Hank Pym in Ultimates 1, he had brutally beaten down on the Wasp. And so for the rest of the team, they don't like Hank at all. And matter of fact, they want her to stay away from him. But of course, doesn't happen. But anyways, when it comes to Hank right now, he's all like, Hawkeye, why in the world should I trust you that you want to help me because you told me that I should stay away from her? He's all like, dude, because right now I know how you feel to lose the woman you love. And so it's Hank saying, okay, fine. You know what, Clint? Help me out right now. Let's locate her. But this leads us back over to the whole plot line going on with the Fantastic Four. Like right now, you have been just watching over Susan, who's still unconscious right now, but you didn't have her powers go crazy. And so for Ben's like, dude, I can't fix this. I can't help her. The only person right now who can help her would be Reed Richards. But Reed right now is not thinking straight. Again, like I said, this storyline is literally the downfall to Reed in this reality, where of course makes him become the Maker down the road in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, we do also see Reed just being hella annoying right now. And sorry for me saying the word hell there, but Reed's being annoying right now because for Reed, he's out here still believing that right now it was Namor who was responsible for all of this, not realizing that Charles is telling him the actual truth. Now, you have Dr. Doom pick up Reed. Once he does, we see Doom alongside with Zarda. Now, Zarda is very important. And the reason why, because she is not from this reality. For Zarda, she comes from the Squadron Supreme universe out of Marvel Max storyline, better known as Supreme Power. Marvel Max in the early 2000s was an idea for Marvel to give adult more comics, like more comics made for adults, right? And one of their storylines was Supreme Power. Supreme Power gave us a new version of the Squadron Supreme. And that team right there is basically more of like, what if Marvel had the rights to the Justice League? And what kind of stories could they tell with those kind of characters in that reality over there? Now, there was another storyline called Ultimate Power, where you had Nick Fury get stuck in that reality and Zarda came over to this reality. But it's Dr. Doom saying, right, hey, if you guys want to bring down Magneto, we got to go get Nick Fury now from her reality. And I'll explain why more down the road of why Nick Fury is in her reality and she's over here in this reality. But now we got to switch over to Thor. Now for Thor, around this time in Ultimate Marvel, he was dating a character known as Valkyrie. Well, thanks to the flood, Valkyrie is dead. And he finds Valkyrie, but he's so heartbroken to see her laying there dead. And so with her dead body being there, he begins to freak out, right? Which honestly, he has the right to freak out. But now he calls Hela and hoping to get the soul of Valkyrie back from Hela. But the thing is, he has to go through a challenge and fight against her army of dead. Now, while doing that, you have Captain America arrive as well, leaving us wondering, is he also dead right now too? But luckily for Thor, he does have someone right now fighting by his side against the army of dead that belongs to Hela. Now, this will also lead into like one crazy storyline way down the road when it comes to Ultimate Comics. Now, for Hank Pym and also Hawkeye, this is a sad moment, and also like it gets really weird in the third chapter. But for Hawkeye and also the Wasp, for Hawkeye and also for Hank Pym, they do locate the Wasp. The problem is that she's now being eaten alive by the Blob. First off, it's messed up, but also it's so sad because for Hank, he's all like, he went on this rampage to find the woman he supposedly loves and finds her getting eaten by, well, the Blob. And man, it's so messed up. It's so weird and wild. And honestly, I kind of hated this part right here because for the Blob, he never did act like this before this storyline. So it's just so weird to see it. But now we get into the big point, Magneto, Charles Xavier. And honestly, we knew it was coming, but here's the thing, because I thought it would come at the very end. I was a young boy, I said, yeah, these two are going to cross paths at the very end of the storyline. I was reading this storyline issue by issue while it was coming out, and I said, Charles and Magneto going to meet at the very end. No, issue number 2. And this right here also ticked off a lot of fans because it basically ended the X-Men line for a good while in Ultimate Marvel because, you know what? Phase 2 Ultimate Marvel was a mess. But anyways, when it comes to Magneto, he's way darker than his main Marvel Universe counterpart. And so with him being like, I hate humans. I will kill them for the smallest reason. Like, give me a reason. Bam, they're dead. And so with Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch being dead, he says, they opened my eyes, opened my mind, and helped me realize humans have caused so much damage on the earth. They gotta go. They gotta go. But for Charles, all like, you are a madman. And when they bring you down, you're going to be labeled as the same kind of person as Hitler and other kind of people who are just as bad as Hitler. And hearing those words tick off Magneto so much, he goes behind Charles and snaps his neck. Charles Xavier is dead. And so now we dive into the third chapter. And the third chapter is really more of us picking up with Mystique. Man, Mystique is messed up with this right here because you have Mystique right now pretending to be the Scarlet Witch, but also kind of giving us a rundown like what is happening across the world when it comes to Magneto. Now, it's also the book reminding us about Jamie Madrox. If you saw my coverage over the Ultimate X-Men tie-ins, we had learned in those tie-ins that when it came to his character, he's being brainwashed. Like the Prime One is being locked away right now and believing that he's still some teenager, but in reality, he's kind of like in his mid-20s right now and being forced to make all these different clones of himself to be used as suicide bombers in different areas across the world. And one of them right now had broke free and it's kind of like, no, Magneto, you had killed off mutants. You gotta go. But you didn't have Magneto kill off that clone in a matter of like a second. So you know what? Bye, you're gone. But yeah, it kind of reminds us what kind of character for Jamie Madrox is right now in the Ultimate Marvel universe. And this chapter is really more of wrapping up some different characters left and right. Like, for example, the idea of Blob, because again, we saw Blob earlier eating the wasp. And so you have Hank Pym grab Blob and just bite his head off. So Blob is now dead officially. And you have Hank Pym just walking away. And for Hawkeye, it's kind of like, okay, that was wild. And also for Hank Pym is carrying the body of the wasp, and he believes he can still save her life. And apparently, you know what? I'm gonna hold this last part for you because they really did drop the ball when it came to this part for her character. But yeah, he does carry her away, thinking that he can save her life somehow still. But now we switch over to the X-Men, right? And so is Wolverine finding the body of Nightcrawler. And that right there is kind of hurts the most because if you saw our coverage over Ultimate X-Men, we saw Nightcrawler kind of go through this whole like development, right? His fall, his re-rising, like he did a lot of things done in the last few issues when it came to Ultimate X-Men. Now, gone, dead. That's it for his character, right? Now, when it comes to Jean Grey, Cyclops, and also Storm and Wolverine and Angel as well, they're all kind of like, okay, let's go ahead and take the dead bodies, Dazzler, Beast, and Nightcrawler, back over to school of Charles Xavier and try to regroup. Now, for Angel, this man right now is a hothead of full extreme. And the reason why, because he lost his girlfriend. Dazzler died. So he's kind of like, you know what? I'm going to go to Magneto right now and kill off Magneto. It's like, dude, you don't even stand a chance against Magneto. And the thing about Angel in this reality, he was a big time pushover in the whole entire series almost. So for him, it's kind of like, do you really think you have the ability to take on Magneto by yourself? Like, do you really think that, my dude? And so you didn't have Jean Grey realize that Charles Xavier is now dead. Now, back to the whole Thor plotline going on, right? You have Thor and Steve Rogers still fighting against the army of dead for Hela, right? And you do have the two of them being able to bring down the whole entire army. Now, Hela does appear, and Hela does bring the body of Valkyrie. So it's kind of like, cool. He came for a mission, he saved Valkyrie's life, and now him and her can live together back in reality. No, Hela says someone gotta stay, like a soul for a soul. Now for Steve Rogers, him saying like, dude, I did my time. You know what? I'm okay with the idea of giving my soul for Valkyrie so you two can live together forever on Earth. But it's Thor saying like, I cannot ask you to do that for me. So we're kind of left to wonder who will give up their soul for Valkyrie. Now let's go ahead and get back over to the plot line that really did bother me, the whole idea of good old Wasp. Because you do have Hank Pym and Hawkeye get back over to S.H.I.E.L.D. base, right? And they're now fighting alongside with Carol Danvers and Iron Man when it comes to fighting against the army of like these different suicide bombers, of course, clones of Jamie Madrox. But while that is happening, right, you have Hank Pym hand the body over to Iron Man and say, take the body of the Wasp over to the lab, my lab, and start the Jocasta project. You're kind of like, oh my God, they're going to bring her back to life, right? And wrong. She does not come back until like Ultimates 2, Volume 2, like way down the road after the original time the Ultimate Marvel Universe was destroyed. So this whole plot line got wasted completely. But anyways, you did have Hank Pym grab all the different suicide bombers, go out into the ocean, and gets blown up. So just like that, Hank Pym is dead. Now we also see Valkyrie wake back up and being confronted by Iron Man. So it's kind of like, okay, cool. We first believe right now that Thor did give up his life for Valkyrie. So bam, she's alive again. And something else must have happened. The reason why I'm saying that because you didn't have Valkyrie and Iron Man go back over to S.H.I.E.L.D., right? And when they do, they see that Steve Rogers also waking up as well. And Steve says Thor gave up his life for Steve Rogers' life. So you're kind of like, wait a second, hold on. He did what? But either way, those two are alive again alongside with Hawkeye and Iron Man. And they're like, hey, Steve, so the Wasp, she's dead. Hank, also dead. Like right now, for us four, is all we got with Carol and Danvers too. And they're all like, cool, let's go after Magneto right now. And you also have Ultimatum once again, like tease the idea of Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker, being killed off because we do see like the Hulk apparently smashed the home of Doctor Strange and all this energy was released. And we're kind of left to wonder if Peter Parker died or not because Kitty Pryde found his mask on the ground. It's all torn up. You're like, oh my God, is Peter dead? He's not dead, y'all. But it's kind of like, oh my God, is Peter dead? But his next part kind of leads into Fantastic Four tie-ins. The idea that you have Doctor Strange fighting against Dormammu and you have Dormammu being able to kill off Doctor Strange very easily. I'm going to tell you right now, in the Fantastic Four tie-ins, you have Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman, and also Ben Grimm being able to defeat Dormammu very easily in their tie-ins as a way to save the life of Johnny Storm, who's right now trapped inside the body of Dormammu, who is somehow powering him up and everything. It was a weird, weird storyline. Like, honestly, they killed off Strange the wrong way. Also, you had somebody take the body of Strange away, leaving us wondering, and nothing happens. What would happen to Strange down the road after that brief moment? Now, we also see here that you have the Hulk on a rampage right now because you have the army trying to bring down the Hulk, but you didn't have the X-Men step in because for Jean Grey, she realized they're going to need the help of the Hulk to at least bring down Magneto. And so we see Jean Grey being able to communicate with the Hulk and kind of agreeing with the idea of helping them to fight against Magneto down the road. But this kind of leads us into the conversation, a brief conversation about ultimate power, because we got to get Nick Fury back in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Let me explain. See, in Ultimate Power, it was a crossover between the Ultimate Marvel universe and also the Squadron Supreme universe from the Marvel Max comic book line. This is where things get pretty complicated. So basically, you had Reed send these probes out to different realities, and his main goal is to see like what other kind of realities are out there, but also kind of seeing like what they were like. One of those probes went into the Squadron Supreme reality, and apparently it causes huge like devastation across the entire world. And so once they had learned the probe came from Reed Richards from the Ultimate Marvel universe, they went after him to arrest him. But in reality, his whole crazy plan done behind the scenes by a fake Doctor Doom and also Nick Fury. And they were like, oh, so Nick, you're at fault for what happened to our world. And so you had the heroes of the Ultimate Marvel universe give Nick over as like a prisoner to, well, pay for his crimes. Now, while being there, he spent 5 years there, and he was able to build a brand new shield in that reality as well. But now it's Doctor Doom and Reed and Zarda saying like, you got to come back home. And the reason why? Because of Magneto. And he's all like, yep, I knew it was going to happen. All right, let's go. Let's go now. And the next part we got to talk about is Wolverine and Kitty Pryde. Now, this plot line does get picked up by Jeff Loeb after Ultimatum, leading to a book called Ultimate X. And honestly, I like that book. I kind of felt like that book could have had so many different story arcs, but unfortunately, that one single story has so many delays if I remember correctly. But it's Kitty Pryde getting a box from Wolverine, because Wolverine saying like me, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Colossus, a few others, we're going to fight against Magneto. And the thing is, I might not come back. So I want to make sure you have this box and do the right thing with this box. And Kitty Pryde, the world needs people like you. Good people. And then Wolverine leaves. Like I said, this plot line does get picked up in Ultimate X, which for me, Jeff Lowe did better there than here right now. My opinion, my opinion. But now we're kind of getting into that final battle, right? Where you have the Ultimates and the X-Men arrive. Now, Angel, being Angel, he comes in first. He does hit Magneto, but then you have Sabretooth kill off Angel in like a matter of 2 or 3 panels. So goodbye, Angel, but you didn't have the rest of the team arrive. First is Valkyrie. She does cut off Magneto's arm, and then she's kind of gone for a brief moment, but the rest of the team arrives. And this leads into the final chapter of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, or phase 1 of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Ultimatum. And so, as we finally enter the final chapter of this crazy storyline, we do pick up with the point of Magneto going up against, well, Wolverine, right? It's Wolverine like, no, this is it. You know, all the time in the past I held back, you did not. And you're trying to be a god now, so now I gotta kill you. You kill mutants, humans, animals, and also like friends. And so it's Wolverine going all out, right? He looked at a few blows in, but you didn't have Magneto control the visor of Cyclops, Iron Man's armor, and then bam, his Wolverine full force. And then further, like, is Wolverine dead? No, because his adamantium, Wolverine's still alive. But you didn't have Magneto after Wolverine stabs him, blast Wolverine to officially kill him off. So just like that, Wolverine's now dead in the Ultimate Marvel universe. You have Colossus and the Hulk right now just destroying the engines to Magneto's like base, right? And while doing that, they're confronted by Mystique, and Mystique's all like, I'm gonna kill you guys, and realize that she had gone and messed up. Like, you can't bring the Hulk down that easily, nor can you bring down Colossus that easily. But you do have Sabretooth grab her and get the heck out of there. But yes, the engines of the place right now have been blown up. But this leads into my favorite moment of the entire storyline, the idea of Nick Fury confronting Magneto. Because there's a storyline called Ultimate Origin, and that was a great storyline. Like, that right there for me was the best like lead into Ultimatum. Ultimates 3, trash. The annuals, trash. This right here, amazing. And the reason why, because you're now really seeing, Nick Fury come up to Magneto saying like, you thought God chose you guys next. That mutants were the next step in evolution. What you don't know is that mutants were created in a lab. You see, when it came to Wolverine, they had kept like doing different kinds of experiments on him. And then they realized with doing that, they had created this X gene with Wolverine, and he gained abilities, healing factor, and all that different stuff like that. And they said, what if we had released some kind of airborne virus that would then help create this race of mutants across the entire world? Bam, just like that, you had the birth of the mutant race in the Ultimate Marvel universe. They were not God's chosen ones or the next step in evolution. No, they were all made in a lab. And so once you have Magneto realize that, he's all like, oh my God, what I did is wrong. What did I do? And so he does fix the pole, put Earth back on its axis again, right? But after doing that, you did have Cyclops, bam, kill off Magneto. The day is saved. The day is done. He is now officially off the board, right? But now we pick up 8 days later. Now, when we do that, it's really more of us now picking up with like, the speech being done by Cyclops. And this right here is very important because it kind of shows the damage done by Magneto. Because with them killing off millions of people across the world, you have humans hating on mutants a whole lot more. And the thing was, when it came to Charles Xavier and the X-Men, in the Ultimate X-Men line, they did a good job trying to bring peace between mutants and humans. Like, you still had humans out there who hate mutants, but not as much as in the main Marvel universe. Well, that right there is not the case anymore. We can see here clear as day that when it comes to mutants, they are full on hated on by the human race. Like right now, humans saying mutants should be dead and gone completely. And so you have Cyclops right now trying to give a speech out to bring peace, and then he's killed off, assassinated just like that. There goes Cyclops. He's no longer around. Bam. But you didn't have Ben Grimm pay a visit over to Doctor Doom. Now, it's Ben Grimm saying, so Reed told me, like, you're at fault for all of this, right? Like, you killed off so many people, and Reed does not have the stomach to kill you off, but I do. And so we see Ben Grimm go ahead and kill off Doctor Doom. Now, this was a big moment, right? Here's the thing. This is not the real Doctor Doom. And I'm not going to sit down and try to explain who this Doom is because it gets somewhat complicated, because the real Doom does appear down the road, like way, way down the road at the very end of the Ultimate Marvel universe. But you didn't have the book end on the note where we do switch over to this small little shack, right? And we kind of find out Quicksilver is not dead. Like, Homeboy 1 faked his death, but 2, he's the reason why Scott Summers is now dead. But it's him saying like, he did what he did to kind of push his father in that direction to begin his own kind of plans, right? And we see him with Mystique and also Sabretooth as well. It is pretty wild. You're like, what? And this will kind of lead into a weird storylines down the road for the idea of like, Quicksilver, the X-Men, and Wolverine's son. It gets really weird. But yeah, guys, this is the end of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.